You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for part 6 of our Obi-Wan Kenobi Retrospective, the final chapter in our Obi-Wan Kenobi Retrospective. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and with me, as always, for our Obi-Wan Kenobi Retrospective, my stalwart and steadfast co-host, Marty Aleman. Marty, we have no time. There is zero time to mess around on this episode because we have an incredible episode of Obi-Wan to talk about. But before we get into that, we have to talk about this trailer. So you and we usually record on Monday nights. We've actually been pretty good about it, right? And it's only 6 episodes, so it wasn't a huge commitment, but we've both managed to be like, okay, Monday night. And then, we had the 1 week break in the middle, but that was sort of planned for. So it's all good. But then last night, both of us were like, it's not happening tonight. This is not happening. Just for a variety of reasons. Right. And it's funny because I was a little bit like, I haven't watched the episode yet. This was like yesterday in the afternoon. I'm like, I haven't watched the episode yet. I'm gonna have to figure out a time to do that. I'm gonna have to like sit in my office and watch it on my computer monitor, which is not, listen, that's not a chore. I have 2 4K monitors in for work. So cause what I do is visual. So like I need nice high def, like not high def 4K displays in order to do my job. So I absolutely could have watched it, but the chair's not as comfy as the couch, and the TV in the living room is 70 inches. So I would rather watch on that,
of course.
But I was like, okay, I guess I'll have to figure out how to make this work. And then I sort of messaged you, and it was a little bit like, yeah, I don't know, I haven't watched it yet. And you're like, yeah, I haven't watched it yet either. And I was like, cool, we should probably record tomorrow. And it made sense. It made sense for us to put it off a day. It's the final episode. It's not that big of a deal. And then we wake up this morning to a ridiculous trailer for Ahsoka.
The Force works in mysterious ways, as you put it, right?
Yeah, and it was absolutely, we were not meant to record last night. We were meant to record tonight so that we could talk about this trailer. Just like broad strokes on this. So, like a lot of this is stuff that we've already seen, that we saw at Celebration. Just in terms of like general content of it is stuff that we've already seen. But this is the first trailer that's really given us a hint at what this story is about. And interestingly, this trailer puts Sabine center stage, almost as the main character of the series, which I think is very interesting and not what has been indicated previously, right? It felt, the trailers before felt very much like this was Ahsoka's show, and it turns out that actually it looks like this, like a lot of this story is going to be about Sabine as well. And a big part of that is that it appears that Sabine at some point was Ahsoka's apprentice. I'm not going to say the word Padawan because I don't think that that's necessarily appropriate here. But certainly an apprentice. This is super interesting because there are indicators in Star Wars Rebels that Sabine is more than a little bit force sensitive, right? There is a line in the trailer from one of these faux Sith, whatever they are, these dark Jedi, where she says, "You have no power," right? Um, but listen, I mean, like when bad guys say things, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, right? So, um, yeah, I mean, like when Kanan was training Sabine with the Darksaber, there were moments, there were definite indications that she is, and this is the thing, force sensitive. Is she like, is her midichlorian count high enough to register, and would she have been taken in as a youngling? Who knows, right? And I don't know that we'll necessarily get a clear answer in that way, but I've talked about on the podcast a bunch of times. Force sensitivity. First of all, the first time I ever saw the term force sensitive was on a Decipher trading card for the original Star Wars. They weren't TCGs back then. It was the Star Wars CCG, customizable card game, and it was on Han Solo's card where it said that he was force sensitive, and what that basically was attributed to was like his luck, right? Han's got that knack for, he bangs on the Falcon and it works, right? Like that sort of thing. But the indication there of like, well, he's an incredible pilot, and everything always seems to work out pretty well for him. There must be an aspect that he's tapped into the Force in some way, because it it flows through all of us. Everyone is connected to the Force, right? I always bring it back to this. In the Rise of Kylo Ren, there's a scene where some of Luke's trainees, his apprentices at his academy, are they're training, and they're talking about like, yeah, but like, it's so much easier for Ben, and like we can't do what he can do, sort of thing. We can't do what you can do. And Luke explains it this way. It's like, where it's like the Force is not like, it's not a power that you have, right? It's like a door, and for some people the door is open a crack, and for other people the door is wide open, and so it like you have to work at it, but anybody can open the door, sort of thing, right? Like anybody can access it with training and with focus. But for some people it's just naturally that doorway is just naturally more open, and it flows more freely. So and as we know, of course, that comes with consequences, right? For Anakin, for Ben Solo, like it's not it's a gift and a curse, right?
Of course.
But there's something here that like Sabine is obviously force sensitive in some way, um, and Ahsoka tried to train her, but like I think the other part of it is just like it's very difficult to train an adult, right, as opposed to a child. Like the child's mind is open, whereas an adult has already, you know, decided how the world works. So I think we'll see some of that conflict, and we'll also see some of Ahsoka's inner conflict playing into that. But that's kind of, to me, that is the biggest takeaway from this trailer, is that piece of information and that confirmation of that character's journey. We also get to see a lot of Hera. We didn't get to see Jason, although we got a clear indication earlier this week that he will be in the series, by virtue of a Lego set that leaked, a new Lego set of the Ghost, specifically for Ahsoka, and it comes with Hera, Jason, a Mon Cal that people were referring to as Quarry, but I don't think that he's labeled as Quarry.
I think he's the
And I don't
character
think it
that's in the
is.
trailer. You may have seen him in the background in the trailer too. So maybe that guy.
Yeah. He might be, maybe he's like Corey Jr. or something like that, right? I don't think that
Or
he'll
Corey's
be.
cousin.
Yeah, I don't think he'll actually be Corey because Corey had the beard, right? But and then I think it comes with like one more figure, like a rebel soldier or something like that. But it's a beautiful set. Oh my god, I already own the Ghost and both Phantoms that they put out. And I'm buying this new one. I'm getting the new one. It has way more detail than the one that came out back in whatever it was,
Okay, it's more refined.
2016 or 17 or something like that. Yeah, it's there's it's I think it's probably a little bit less playable. Like the one that I've got is a little bit more of a playset that like kind of opens up and has all these like sort of little things inside
I
it and
see.
that sort of thing. But um
Interesting.
and it is both the Ghost and the Phantom. It looks like the Phantom too, but it might actually be a completely new Phantom. We haven't really gotten a very clear look at it in the show yet. So, yeah,
Yeah, I don't think we've actually
it's
seen the ghost really in the trailers, unless you count like her in the cockpit. But I don't actually. That might have,
we've seen the Ghost, but we've only seen the Phantom in like these like really brief shots, like these brief flybys, and mostly from behind. So
right.
it's really difficult to gather whether or not it's the same one from uh the end of season 2 of season 4, right?
Yeah,
It's the Nemoidian shuttlecraft, right?
yeah,
That they steal when they fight all the battle droids. They take it and refit it, right? But I'm I'm kind of going through frame by frame right now on the trailer to try and find the shots with it.
yeah. It was too.
But it's hard to pinpoint
It's a
the
gorgeous trailer, though. I mean,
actual Phantom. Oh my god, the series looks incredible. One of the other things to note is that we get our first glimpse, and it's one of those like blink and you'll miss it type of moments, but it is absolutely 100% without a shadow of a doubt an E-wing, which is previously an expanded universe vehicle
oh, I missed that one.
from the Heir to the Empire series, right? The E-wings are what they use to take down the world devastators.
Give us a timestamp, which where we're looking at. I'm curious now.
Like around like just about a minute or maybe a little bit before.
Okay.
It's the shots with Sabine with where Sabine's on the speeder bike.
Oh, okay.
Um
That's what we're talking about. Okay, I thought it was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
a
So
T-70
50
X-wing.
no 50 51 52 is
Oh,
when it
you're
comes in.
right.
Yeah, it is without a shadow of a doubt an E-wing.
54 seconds, guys. 54
Yeah,
seconds.
yeah, you can see it really really clearly, and then you can see it again in the shot where she kind of like drops underneath. And by the way, that's Kanan's speeder bike. That is
Right.
Kanan's speeder bike from. She's repainted it, but it's 100% Kanan's speeder bike as well, um, which sort of has its own design, but she kind of like skids underneath it. So this is clearly like a new Republic ship of some kind. And then the little droid kind of pops up at the end, and I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures online,
Yes.
but this guy is modeled after the 1978 Kenner R2D2 figure,
Yes.
which was
So
not
cool.
screen accurate, but now we have a droid that is screen accurate to that figure. I love it when they do stuff like this. It makes me so happy.
Right.
Because it's not like they made it 1-to-1, right? He's got his own vibe. But it's a little bit bridging the gap between R2 and BB-8 in a really great way.
Yeah,
So
it
yeah,
really is.
fantastic little droid there. We get to hear Ezra's voice for the first time. Very exciting. So that's a big component of this one. Um, but
Everything
yeah,
is fantastic. I watched it
yeah.
with my
You
daughters.
talk for a bit because I've been
Yeah.
talking a lot. You go ahead and talk
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
bit.
It's all good. Um, my I watched it with my daughters, and I mean, we're talking 7 years old and 2 years old, and even the 2-year-old was like Ahsoka, so she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
all about it, and so the girls are all into it. But like about the actual content of the trailer, I just seen Ray Stevenson, and I really like that they focused at least the beginning and some of the trailer on him, especially after what's happened to him. So it's very just awesome just seeing more of him, and I'm intrigued to see what happens with him. What kind of like what you said regarding the focus of the trailer being more about Sabine. I When it comes to these trailers, I always am curious about what they're not showing us, and there's a lot of similar sequences that we've seen over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. So, I think the most unique sequence that we saw in this new trailer is the Purgle scene, and
Yeah.
because that was, Ahsoka's wearing a completely different outfit in that scene. Same with Sabine, and different, just complete, sets and whatnot. So that's the one thing I
Yeah.
noticed. One of the things that actually, after my, I don't know, 12th time seeing it today, kind of noticed during the scene where they're kind of in that I don't know what you call it, the hedgestone circle, Morgan Elsbeth and the wannabe Sith, let's just call them for right now.
Mm.
And she waves open the map, and there's this green flame underneath the frame. I don't know if you caught that. And every time we ever see a green flame in Star Wars, kind of points to Night Sisters. And
Mm.
now is Morgan Elsbeth a Night Sister, or at least from Dathomir, or just knows that magic? So that's kind of intriguing. Little theory that kind of popped in my head when I was watching this. But yeah, it's unmistakable. It's a green flame. So I'm like,
You
what's going
know,
on?
yeah, I mean, the colors of her outfit also indicate that, right?
Yes,
So you might be right. This might be connected to the Night Sisters. Um, yeah,
but
I mean, that's a good catch. That's a good catch for sure. Because she's got that maroon color to her, right? So,
mhm.
uh, but these two, the Ray Stevenson character and the other one, they appear, or at least he appears to be a former Jedi,
Oh yeah,
right? Well, like the way that he talks about Anakin.
he name dropped
Um,
Anakin hard.
yeah, yeah. So like that says to me that like he was a Jedi.
Hmm.
He's a fallen Jedi most likely. But I will just confirm this is absolutely the Phantom 2. This is the Nemoidian ship. The modded Nemoidian ship. Just freeze framing it and looking at it from behind. Also looking at the cockpit, which is a very like prequel era cockpit on the inside of it. But the thing
Nice.
that tells me that it is that ship is is the side compartment for Chopper. Which is another one of those like absolutely blink and you'll miss it sort of moments. But yeah, so there we go, confirmed. It is the Phantom 2. So
Oh
that
yeah,
new Lego set will have both
confirmed.
of those.
Oh
It's
yeah, there's
exciting.
Chopper.
Yeah,
This is fun doing an audio podcast and looking at a trailer visually.
yeah.
Anyway,
Everybody's watched it a million times.
of course, yeah.
Um, yeah,
But Hera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, this is our first real like glimpse at her
yeah.
embodying the character, as opposed to just a couple shots of her. I really just love how they're leaning into the Rebels sequel series with this trailer, and
Oh yeah,
very
yeah,
much in the same tone as like what Obi-Wan Kenobi did with. I mean, it was an Obi-Wan Kenobi show about Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it was also about Leia. It was also about Reva.
yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen with Sabine and Hera as well. I mean, and come on, Jason. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't anticipate that Jason will be in much of the series. I think that we'll see him maybe in the first episode and maybe in the last episode sort of thing. I don't
mm,
think that he'll be around too much, at least in this first season. Maybe will. Oh yes, Ahsoka is in a different outfit. It looks like she's in like a flight suit of some kind.
yeah,
In
something.
that second outfit.
Oh, and
But
then the visual poetry of Sabine cutting her hair in
yeah,
relation to Kanan from the finale, like the final season of Rebels, is just
yeah.
beautiful.
I can't believe that we're gonna get to see. I mean, we got the little Easter egg. I'm not really an Easter egg because I think it's an important plot point with the Purgle in in Mando season 3, but
Mhm.
like we saw some silhouettes of Purgle in hyperspace in Mando. We get to see this isn't just a Purgle. This is one of the big ones. One of the ones from the finale of Rebels, right?
Mm.
That's I think that's the first time we ever see the big ones, right? But um, yeah, it's very exciting stuff, man. Oh my god, this series is going to be incredible. We get like full on Grand Admiral Thrawn. We see him from the front, and he's looking phenomenal. Uh, this is gonna be a good one. This is gonna be a good one. I can't.
Yeah. Every little thing that they're trying to hold back on, they're holding back. So like before in the first trailer, it was Thrawn from behind. In this
Yeah.
trailer, seeing Thrawn from finally seeing his face in live action. It's the first time. This is a red letter day, guys. If anyone's ever read the Heir to the Empire trilogy back in 1990, what was it, two? This is a beautiful moment for everyone. Let's just take a moment to enjoy this. But then like
Yeah.
there's another thing that's about to come that we haven't even heard his voice in live action. So it's like they keep holding back and like they give us little breadcrumbs to just kind of hold us over, and then we'll probably finally hear his voice, for the first time in the show. So
Yeah.
no, it's just great. Going back slightly real fast, and then we could go to Obi-Wan, but how you're talking about how basically in this show or in this trailer we actually get the reveal that Sabine kind of looks to Ahsoka, even if it's sarcastically in this trailer, as a master at some point. So it's like, so in those moments you kind of start to think like, when did that actually happen in the timeline? And it had to have happened during the original trilogy. I mean, she
Mm.
comes back before A New Hope, and there's this, in the teaser trailer, we see these moments where it's very reminiscent of what happened in Rebels, where she comes out and Ahsoka lands, and they're just talking in Lothal, but Sabine has her long hair. That has to be before, I'm assuming, when they left, possibly. And then
Hmm.
maybe when she cuts her hair and they have that Rebels finale moment, that's when we're going to carry on the rest of the story. I don't know. But it's very interesting because obviously she couldn't have really taught Sabine anything because she didn't have the dark saber. That was around season 3 of Rebels, and Ahsoka was gone for that time. So I'm just very excited to see how this story plays out. And let's hear it for the ladies, man. We got 3 badass ladies in this show,
Oh yeah.
just being amazing. So that's really all I got. But it's a fantastic trailer, probably one of the best Disney Plus series trailers we've gotten in recent memory, if I could completely be honest.
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean they absolutely nailed it with this one, and the series just looks like it's going to be so good. I'll just note, we got to see Hu Yang
Mhm.
in the celebration trailer, but as a matter of fact, I think we saw Hu Yang. I think I saw Hu Yang a year ago at Celebration, but in Anaheim. But that
Mhm.
was one that like the general audience didn't get to see. Um, but yeah, I mean, like this character coming to life as well. I mean, this is for all intents and purposes Star Wars Rebels season 5. I it just is. I think now that I'm done with Obi-Wan, right? We've finished that rewatch. I think I have to start a rapid fire rewatch of Star Wars Rebels before
Dude,
August 23rd, so that I can be fully refreshed on it, because there's so much of it that is just season 1 and 2 I've seen quite a few times, but season 3 and 4 not nearly as much. I mean, I've said this before. I've seen every episode at least twice, because I would watch it when it aired and then I would watch it before we recorded. Um, I but yeah, the season 3 and 4 I haven't seen. I think more than those 2 times when it was originally airing. So I need to go back and really refresh my memory, because that like season 3 is really when Sabine's story comes in. And I think one of the reasons why we're seeing Sabine as a central character here is because this is all going to tie into the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and Skeleton Crew and all of, like, it's all going to come together. And Sabine is a Mandalorian, right? So there's every possibility that that she will be both a Mandalorian and a Jedi, the same as Grogu, and we'll start to see even more of those two cultures blending together into one. Because that is, I mean, to me, like that, it the more Mando stories we tell, the more obvious it becomes to me that the the path forward for both cultures is to become one, is for them to not blend together necessarily, but to like coexist in symbiosis with each other, right? Like for them to like ebb and flow together instead of coming against each other in conflict as they did in the past. So like that's
I
your new
mean,
Jedi Order in my opinion, but
you
we'll
got the
see.
perfect marriage with this right here. It's happening where you have a Mandalorian and a learning from a Jedi, and in the best way possible. And
Yeah,
is she force
exactly.
sensitive? And like therein lies the conflict too, where why it didn't work out before, and
Mm-hmm.
why hopefully in this story it will move forward and work. But it's just fascinating because it's all going to come together eventually. It's just we got to have these conflicts first because that's good stories. So no, it's fantastic overall.
Yeah.
Really excited.
Cool. Well, I think with that we can jump into Obi-Wan part 6. And yeah, I mean, like, this is it. This is the conclusion of our journey here. There's actually, like, in the first half of the episode, there's really not that much to talk about because it, like, we start off with the, oh, we're trying to escape, the Star Destroyer is barreling down on the escaping ship that everybody's in. The motivator, was it the motivator? Something is
Yeah,
busted.
it's always the
They
motivator.
need to, yeah, they need to fix it. So Obi-Wan makes the decision of, like, I'm going to take Roken's little ship and I'm going to draw Vader away. Right? He's after me. They'll stop chasing us. Now this is the one plot hole in the show, but this is such a classic Star Wars plot hole that really doesn't bother me at all. But there is absolutely the aspect of, like, he drops out in his little ship, flies away, and then Vader is like, I'm gonna go after him myself in his own shuttle. Why can't the why can't the Star Destroyer pursue the other ship? Like they're splitting up anyways, right?
Right.
And when Obi-Wan leaves the planet, the Star Destroyer, it's not like it's in orbit waiting for Vader, right? Like his shuttle has a hyperdrive. Like they went home, right?
Right.
But it's like, but why? Like it doesn't make a lot of sense. But this is there are many instances in Star Wars of things like this happening. So it's just don't think about it too much. Um, but yeah, I but before Obi-Wan leaves, he's got a good moment with Leia. I mean, first she doesn't want him to leave. She gets quite upset. She runs off, and then Haja steps in. He's like, we should give her a little bit of space. And then Obi-Wan is like, look, you got to promise me that you'll get her home. And this is the beginning of the, like, emotional heartstring tugging moments of this finale, where he's like, oh yeah, I'll give you my word, as much as you can trust the word of a con artist, fake Jedi. And he's like, it's Obi-Wan's like, it's good enough for me. Which
I
is
wrote
like
that down too.
Hodge's redemption, right? It's his
Totally.
it's his moment of, like, getting the nod from Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. um so yeah, I mean, like, that's that is the first moment in this episode where it, like, starts to get you. um but I really hope that we see Haja again in something. Oh, I really hope that we do. That
Haja and
character is so
Roku.
much fun. Yeah, Haja and Roken in something, in anything. Put them in the next Jedi game in
Yeah, why not?
in the final chapter, right? But
I
Um,
love real fast. I do love his acknowledgement of his own trust in question, because it's just fantastic writing. Because it's just one of those moments where, as the audience, you could be like, "You're really going to trust this guy," and then he actually says what we're thinking. Like yeah, as much as a word of a liar and a fake Jedi. He's like, "It's good enough for me." We're
mhm.
desperate times, desperate measures. So, but I love how they just acknowledge it right away, and you know, it's great. But great writing in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so then Obi-Wan and Leia have a little bit more of a heart to heart, and he's like, "Look, I have to go do this. You have to stay safe. It's you're more important than I am. You're the future," sort of thing. And I and then I he I this he asks to borrow Lola, right? He needs to borrow Lola. Um, but I he's like, I'll bring her back, sort of thing. Um,
Did he ask? I thought I thought
or does
no.
Leia offer?
I think Leia was giving it, or like letting the passengers like Lola kind of calm them down, and then he later just found Lola and the robes as a like basically the whole point of Lola was to like calm them down to not be scared.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
And
right.
then he
Yeah,
opens up the robes. Lola's there. Is like, don't be scared for facing Vader, basically. So
yeah.
I think that was what it was.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Um, so yeah, he peels off. He gets in the little ship and he peels off, and they go. He goes down to the planet. Vader stops everything and is like, "I'm going after him alone," and takes his shuttle down, and then we're kind of as this is happening, we're kind of intercutting it with with Reva going to Tatooine to first find Owen. So there's a scene where she's kind of questioning people in Mos Eisley, trying to figure out where Owen is, and then eventually, that word gets back to Owen from somebody else. So he goes back to the homestead, and he and Baru. I feel like we just like kind of get through this part of it right now. Like I going back and forth and trying to remember when it cuts back and forth is pointless.
Yeah, we could do the B storyline first for
Yeah,
sure.
but this is where we get character redemption for both Owen and Baru, who are very flat characters in all of their appearances up until this point. I mean, Owen has some good stuff in the season premiere, like in the first episode, but other than that, he really doesn't get a lot to do in Revenge of the Sith or Attack of the Clones, right? And he's a little bit. I mean, like he kind of gets the short end of it in A New Hope because he's got to kind of be the bad guy holding Luke back, right? He's
Right.
the threshold guardian on that one, so he kind of gets the raw deal there. But these two characters get the opportunity to kind of redeem themselves in this episode. Baru especially, who has next to no character. But then all of a sudden it's like Owen's like, we gotta go, we have to run. And she's like, no, she'll just chase. Like, we have to make a stand. We're prepared for this. We knew this day would come.
Were
So
enough.
like, yeah, we're enough, which is great. And she kind of, I goes Rambo and is like, here's the guns, like take up your
Yeah.
position, like let's do
So
this.
good.
Um, and so when Reva does get there, they kind of have a plan. It doesn't really work
Yeah,
though. I mean, like I think that they're a little bit outgunned by a
for sure.
Jedi.
Yeah.
I'm
They're
sorry,
they're
but
shooting at her, throwing pot plants at her,
yeah,
and then they kind of have a plan in sense of like, defensive. At one point he's on the bridge, and Baru is with Luke. And going back again to what I said last week regarding like just the courage of the show, where it really just plays close to the quote unquote canon of Star Wars, to where we get to a point where Luke Skywalker, before he's really Luke Skywalker in A New Hope, almost sees a red bladed lightsaber attacking him,
Mhm.
by moments, seconds, milliseconds, he misses it. It's just like, again, going back to the courage of the show of why not? It's almost like, instead of like the classic question of like the general fan that would be like, why would you do that in a story like this? How about the why not? And they go with the
Mhm.
why not. Why not do this? And I think it's very effective, especially to the point, because there's a part of me that every time I kind of watch this episode, I almost want to just stick with the A story, the Obi-Wan and Vader story. But then every time it cuts back, it's like, okay, well, we got to see this too. Um, I still love it. I don't know about the cross cutting so much, but it does kind of fit the story to where, Obi-Wan has to end up on Tatooine anyway, and this is the end of the story. But what it does positively is, like you said, it gives character to Owen and Beru, which we've never had. I mean, Beru, at least by Bonnie Peace before in Attack of the Clones, she literally had one line, and it was "Hello." That was it. And
Yeah.
as soon as she comes into this, she completely she almost like takes control of the entire like homestead at that point. And Owen's just like, oh, okay, here we go. And it was just kind of great to see that side of the relationship, which we've never had. I mean, these characters in canon probably have, about 20 some odd years, maybe even more, 25 years of like canon lore around them. Yet they're just the uncle and aunt of Luke, and that's really, they're farmers. Their dad, married Shmi. That's really all we ever got from them before. And like, just in the few minutes that we have with them, we get so much. And yeah, it's through action, but it's character through action, where we have these moments where Owen actually tells, like, he does belong to me. He belongs to us. He is my boy. And that was beautiful. That was fantastic. And I mean, we got Joel Edgerton, so we got to use him, So
Mhm.
overall, it's just great. And love seeing these characters used to the fullest extent.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, what incredible luck to to cast Joel Edgerton at the point that George did, right, for Attack of the Clones.
Dude.
Um, I think primarily for the look, right? Like, I think that was the main reason that he was cast. And then it turns out that this guy is a phenomenal actor. I mean, like, I think one of the better of this generation, and like certainly one of the most like unsung heroes. So anytime he shows up in anything, he is really really good, and
Mhm.
he crushes it in this. He nails this character, um, of really like bringing dimension uh, to the very limited performance that's in A New Hope, right? And sort of drawing that back, pulling it back. Um, toward at the end of the episode, like in his final scene,
Mm.
when he says, "Do you want to meet him?" and there's just like that little bit of like he's got like this reluctant smile, and it's like it says everything that you need it to say about how Owen feels in this moment, where it's like as much as as much as he is the threshold guardian, he's the one keeping Luke prisoner from going on this adventure. Um, he does like everything that he is doing, everything that he does is out of love for this boy, right?
Mm.
That is so clear. And so, in that moment, it's like, well, the best thing for him right now is to give Obi-Wan this opportunity, right? So, yeah, it's just I think that they got so lucky having this actor play this role and be able to be brought in. I mean, like just the whole thing of it of I mean, like Hayden, I think is a lot less luck and a lot more um, brilliant casting from day one. As much as people will malign his performance in the prequels, I think they're wrong. I think he plays that character to a T. But I I think that there's some directing that is not as great as it could be. But 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 in terms of like what Hayden brought to it, I think that Hayden, I mean, he defines that character, right? So, um,
Mhm.
But having him, having Ewan, having Joel Edgerton, like having all of these actors reprising these roles and coming back in, um, it's just like it's Jimmy Smits, right, as Bail Organa,
Mhm.
getting to add so much more to that and giving us so much more of why Leia grows up to be the woman that she is, right? Why she becomes the person that she becomes. Um, the one thing there that drives me nuts is that like she had such good parents. I'm just flabbergasted as to how she messed up with Ben so much, but that's a story that we need to get eventually. I don't know that we ever will. They'll just relegate it to bit parts in books and stuff like that. We'll never get the full story, I don't think. But um, we'll only ever get the Luke and Ben stuff. I don't think that we'll ever get that much time with Leia ever
Well,
again.
maybe
But
that was. I think the what the story is regarding that is that it was more of Han failing than Leia failing, if anything, because it's even
no,
right.
not at all. Not at all.
Really?
I don't think so at all. This is going to be controversial, and people are probably going to come after me for this, or maybe they won't. There's not enough people listening for anybody to come after me. Leia is the one who messes up. Absolutely, unequivocally, Leia is the one who messes up. She messes up her relationship with Han, and she messes up her relationship with her son, and she pawns Ben off on Luke because she's got other stuff that she's focused on. If you read between the lines in Bloodline and Last Shot, Leia is not around. Like she's, because I mean, like at a certain point she's basically the leader of the entire New Republic, so she has important responsibilities, but those important responsibilities of trying to establish this new government absolutely draw her away from her husband and leave him alone with their son, and he doesn't know what he's doing, right? Like Ben wouldn't have survived if Chewie wasn't around, right? And Chewie knows what he's doing because Chewie's got a son, right? Like Chewie's raised kids, but like he's got experience in that field, but um, yeah, like if not for like a bit of the support network, it would have been even worse. But then so Han, everything that Han does is a reaction to that reality. Um, that is like, and here's the thing, like this is what I'll go back to, and this is how it relates into Obi-Wan. Han didn't have parents, right? He was an Oliver Twist street urchin on Coruscant,
Right.
right? Like we don't know the full story of what's happened with that in canon, but we do have a general idea of it from expanded universe stuff, from Legends canon, right? um so the relationship that he did have with his parents was not a good one. His father was not a good father, for the limited time that Han spent with him. And then yeah, in Solo we learned that he grew up on the streets, basically, you know, as a pickpocket and a thief and all of that sort of thing, for a evil worm lady, right? Like I don't expect that man to have a fully assembled toolkit for parenting.
Right.
I But what we see in this series is that Leia, she was 19 years old when Alderaan blew up. It's not like she was a teenager, right? Like it's not like she was 12 or something when she lost her parents. She was an adult. And I mean, like 19 years old is still a child as far as I'm concerned. Like I wouldn't trust a 19-year-old with a hell of a lot. But but at the same time, like you are fairly fully formed in your identity, and she has two stellar examples of parents, as far as the evidence that we currently have indicates, right? Like she had a good mother and a good father, and she learned from them and became a good person as a result. So by the time that we get to the point of her being a mother in, post Return of the Jedi, I I'm a little bit like, no, it was absolutely like she was the quarterback, and she messed up, right? You can only assign so much of that to Han, and I would say that the Force Awakens and the Last Jedi support that, that she carries a lot of guilt, and takes a lot of the blame. It is why she's not the one who goes to Ben, right? She says to Han, "You have to go." She sends him off to his death, right? I'm like, why couldn't she get on a ship and go, right? Why didn't she go with Han to do that, right? And it's like, well, because she doesn't want to face Ben, so she puts it on Han again. And then in The Last Jedi, you see the toll that takes on her, that of Han being dead, and it's her fault, and she didn't do what she should have done, and she's very much resigned to her fate, to a certain degree at the end of that movie, until Luke shows up to save the day, right? And so much of that to me is has to do with Ben, more than it has to do with like the Resistance being at the end of its life, right? It was so much of that is like, no, she messed up, and it's the chickens have come home to roost, sort of thing. But anyways, what a massive tangent, and something that I
Sorry.
don't think I've ever talked about on a podcast, because I think I think that most people want to see Leia as pretty infallible, but I I think it's actually really important to acknowledge that, like, both her and Han messed up in raising Ben, and then Luke has his part in that as well. But Snoke and all of that had done plenty by that point to to undermine any lessons that Luke would have had to impart to Ben. But in any
No, it's
case,
no, it's a
yeah,
good point.
it's yeah.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
never, never thought of it that way. The way you put it out, where it was kind of on her and she wasn't around. So I guess the examples I was thinking about was just the way I guess Ben's perception was handling it, because he, not that he didn't hesitate, but obviously what happens to Han in The Force Awakens. But there was that hesitation in The Last Jedi when he is about to go blow
Mhm.
up the ship, and because it's mommy, so. I guess maybe he puts her more in a pedestal kind of situation, but
Well, what's that relationship going to be? So again, this is supporting what I'm talking about, right? That
exactly, yeah.
relationship is going to be really clear. Han was around. Han was the target of that. Like, what he leaves when he's 10, right? He goes to Luke when he's 10. So like that sort of that pre-adolescent angst that's starting to bubble up, it's going to be directed at Han because Han was around, right? So all of that, like, and it's Han. You know that, like, when Ben got upset, that Han yelled. He didn't handle it properly, right? Um, which is
Yeah.
the way that he reacts when he's like like Luke was a Jedi, and she's like, well, yeah, but you're his father, sort of thing. It's like, but you can see that Han didn't have that confidence, to to parent from a place of gentleness. I think that he would have been very reactive. So that's that source of conflict is still there, and and like it's a thing of I I Han gives him permission, right? In those moments, it's difficult to put into words, because they're standing there on that gangway, and he's saying, like, I know what I have to do. I don't know if I have the strength to do it. And Han's like, you do, right? And they're talking about two different things, and it's only too late that Han realizes, like, when he tries to take the lightsaber, and Kylo doesn't let go. He
Hmm.
realizes, like, oh, you are talking about something else, and it's too late, and he kills him, right? But yeah, like, that is very much like I need to be free of you, right, sort of thing. Whereas if his mother was never there, then she's this, like, missing goddess figure in his life, right? Like, that like the absentee parent is often the one that gets idolized, even though, you know, by being an absentee, it's like what's worse, right? Being the dad that's there yelling, or being the mom that's off doing something else, right? That's
Right.
like preoccupied with work or responsibilities or whatever. Like which one of these is worse? But from the perception of the kid, it's like, so whenever mom's around, it's like oh, I need to savor this, right? So as an adult, not that I don't think that Kylo Ren is like doing this work. I don't think that he's thinking about this. I think this is all subconscious in the character, and I'm reading a lot into this. None of this is in the script, I would wager. Right? I don't know. Maybe Ryan Johnson thought about this stuff, but I would wager that it's not really there. I think there's also just an innate relationship between mothers and their children that's different than the relationship between fathers and their children, right? Um,
Mm.
it has to be like there's no there's no way around that. I will stop myself right now and say I'm using very like gender binary language on this right now, and that's not to exclude anybody. That's just, I think, because the example that we're talking about is that example, so I'm kind of in that. But a person who uh grows another human being is going to have a deeper connection with that child. Not deeper, it's a very different type of connection than the other parent, right? Whoever that other parent is, the one that like gestated that life, it's like that human being that comes out is literally a part of that person that just like one day separates and leaves and is eventually walking around and living their own life exposed to the world. I can't imagine what that feels like. I like that is a singular thing for people who have that ability. So um but yeah, so that relationship is going to be inherently different than the relationship between like Han as Ben's father and him, right? So you can just read it in that way. But when you take all of it into perspective and you look at the whole picture of everything that's in like these novels and stuff, and Last Shot is probably the one that most people haven't read. Like that, I would say like I don't think as many people have read Last Shot as have read Bloodline. It's a much more popular book. Bloodline is about Leia. Last Shot is about Han. I mean, Last Shot is about Han and Lando, but I it switches between their perspectives. But actually, it switches between their perspectives, and it switches between three different timelines. Um,
Yep.
Last Shot is such a good book. Oh my god, Last Shot's one of my favorite Star Wars novels. It's funny, all my favorite Star Wars novels are Han Solo books, but um, but yeah, Last Shot's so good. If people haven't read Last Shot or listened to the audiobook is stellar because there are multiple narrators for it. So when you switch between young Han, because I think it's like a Han story that takes place after Solo but before A New Hope,
Yeah.
and it's a Lando story that takes place before Solo, right?
Hmm.
When he's still got the Falcon, because all three stories are basically take place on the Falcon in three different time periods. So there's like those two, and then the final storyline is like it's like a post Return of the Jedi. I think Ben is like 5 years older, not even. I think he's like 3 or 4 years old.
Three or
He's like,
two or three. Yeah.
yeah, maybe even younger, because he's like just talking sort of thing. Um, he calls Lando Uncle Wando in the book. Like it's like in the book. It's so great. It's so great. And Lando calls him Little Starfighter, and it's like the best thing ever. And yeah, there's so much in there, man. Oh my god, Last Shot's such a good book. But it takes place in those three time periods, and each of those three time periods is narrated by a different voice, so you always know where you are in the story. And they actually got a black person to do Lando's stuff, so that's like, oh, that's nice. That's a nice thing. And you don't have a white guy doing a fake Lando accent, which you have most of the time, in the or a Finn accent, or right, like they've kind of got these like anyways, that's a whole other thing. We are so far afield from Obi-Wan Kenobi right now, but that's okay. it's a Star Wars podcast. This is the way it goes.
This is the way.
Yeah. Man, where were we even? So we were talking about
Talk about Owen
we were
and
talking about
Baru.
Owen and Baru and all that.
Did you want to real fast? Did you want to like finish the entire B storyline and then go into Obi-Wan and Vader?
Well, I think we get to the point. We can get up to the point where Reva eventually manages to like chase Luke out into the desert. Right?
Okay.
She gets past Owen and Baru, and chases Luke out into the desert. And I think that's kind of where we leave it until Obi-Wan comes back into the story at the end. So, I mean, like, listen, the Anakin and Obi-Wan of it, there's really not a lot to say that we haven't already said. We talked about it a lot last week. It is an incredible lightsaber fight. It is up there for me. This is one of the better ones.
Indeed.
And it is one of the better ones, not because necessarily of the choreography, although the choreography is all like top notch. As a matter of fact, I personally think this choreography is better than Battle of the Heroes and Revenge of the Sith.
Agreed.
Battle of the Heroes is very exciting. It's wild, right? Like it goes all sorts of places. It is way too long and it is way over the top. Way over the top. Like everything what's crazy to me is that there are sequences that didn't make it into the movie. You know what I mean? Because like when you watch that on screen and you're like, I'm sorry, you guys shot more than this? You shot more stuff than this, because that fight goes on forever. And I know it's intercut with Sidious and Yoda, but both of those fights are like excessive in the extreme. And I think that you could cut down the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith, and it would play better. There's a lot of back and forth, and it's like, okay, we get it. They're both very good. They're equally matched. All of that stuff. This fight is actually a narrative. Like there's actually stuff going on, and there's some really great dialogue in it. Some of the best in Star Wars, as far as I'm concerned.
And acting.
Yeah. Your strength is returned, but the weakness remains. Is like everything Vader says in the Obi-Wan series is like top notch Vader. It's so good. Yeah, and obviously like the end of the fight is one of the best scenes. It is among the best scenes in the series. It's among the best scenes in Star Wars. I mean, like it's so good. I think that people undersell this one and don't appreciate it. They continue to not appreciate it for how good it is. I really think in the same way that the Clone Wars bolsters the story of the prequels, this episode in particular, but the Obi-Wan Kenobi series in general, bolsters the story of the prequels so much. Like this really gets us from Anakin in the prequels to Vader in A New Hope, and how that character is so wildly different because he is, right? Like the Vader that we see in A New Hope is not the same man that went into the suit at the end of Revenge of the Sith, right? That man was passion and fire, and like before he turns, that's a good thing. He's the hero of the Republic, right? Like it's a like he and Obi-Wan single-handedly win that war, right? Like the two of them are responsible for winning that war, as like more than any other Jedi, without a doubt. Like I think that that's academic, right? The war would not have gone on as long as it did. The Jedi would have had to concede if not for the two of them showing up at the last minute. Oh, I don't know, a good 2 or 3 dozen times, right? If you add it, like if you combine all of the Clone Wars stuff, the micro series, even though it's not canon, the novels, even though some of them aren't canon, right? The video games, which are definitely not canon, like the Clone Wars video game is so not canon, it's not even funny. But I do you remember that game
Of
that was
course.
like on the Xbox? I think that was just on like regular Xbox, right? Yeah, and GameCube,
I had it
PlayStation
on
2
PS2.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah. That introduced the clone hover tank. That's the first time we ever saw that, and then eventually the Clone Wars series would make that canon. But
And James Arnold
I
Taylor too as the voice. I
yep,
think that was
yep.
that preceded the Clone Wars micro series.
No, okay. So, but it is not his first time doing the voice. His first time doing the voice was the Episode 3 video game. He was the voice double for Ewan in the game. So, yeah,
Oh,
no.
okay.
James Arnold Taylor's been doing Obi-Wan's voice for a very long time.
Wait, didn't the Clone Wars micro series and the Clone Wars video game come out before Revenge of the Sith?
Uh, did it?
Anyway, I'm pretty sure. I remember there were some cutscenes because it was like, there were some
The
cutscenes that
micro
had,
series obviously does. So you're right on that one. But
yeah.
um, man, is there another video game that he did? Now I got to bring up James Arnold Taylor. We have to answer this question.
um,
What's the first time that he ever did that voice? What's the first time that he ever
I
did?
could have sworn it was the Clone Wars video game because I remember the clones from Geonosis being on the cover, and there was these cutscenes with Anakin and Dooku fighting. I'm like, oh, that's cool. They got to fight again, and it was preceded before the Clone Wars micro series, and obviously the Clone Wars series where Anakin and Dooku always fight each other. So it was interesting that way. But that was one of the few things that I remembered, and I remember also vaguely that the actor that played Anakin also kind of did a more of a Hayden in Attack of the Clones impression. But
Oh my god, it no shade or anything like that towards the to that voice actor, but boy oh boy is that a terrible take.
yeah,
I hate Anakin in the micro series. It's
that too.
so
Yeah,
bad, and I'm so glad that they got Matt Lanter for the regular series, because Matt Lanter redefines that character. And yeah, he I don't think that he would have the gravitas that he does if not for Matt Lanter. He crushes that role. But let's see. I'm nearing it in the IMDb.
what,
I'm nearing
what
that
you know,
era.
what's funny about the whole Matt Lanter and Hayden of it all is that to me, Hayden had a voice in the prequels, and then Matt Lanter kind of went almost, it felt like a slightly different direction, but then as Hayden's grown up, he almost retroactively kind of sounds like Matt Lanter, like just Hayden being Hayden, like on the stage and whatnot. It's very interesting. I mean, he kind of brings it back in the Obi-Wan series where he's playing Anakin in episode 5. Kind of sounds more like his Anakin that he played. But I don't know if you ever noticed that, but to me it was like, oh, kind of, they do sound similar, like when they're on stage together.
Sorry, I'm trying to find. I'm not even seeing the Clone Wars video game on his IMDb. I'm having a hard time tracking it down. What year did that game come out? That would have been
2003, I think.
yeah. That's my guess as well, right? That would have been the earliest that it would have come out, and I'm not
It's really
seeing
hard
it.
finding. It's really hard finding voice actors IMDb because they do so much inherently,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh my god.
So it's like just go to uh his name is
I don't.
escaping me right now. Who
I
plays
think
Homer?
I don't think that he did the voice in that game.
Maybe he
This is
didn't.
this is we got to put in the Clone Wars. Either that or this game is not in IMDb, right? Like
Could be it too.
that's the only other option here. No, Star Wars. Here we go. Star Wars: The Clone Wars, 2002. So this would be the game.
Yeah, I'm on Wikipedia. I went
Which
to a
you're right
different
would absolutely predate uh, uh,
voice cast.
him voicing in the. No, it's not him. Jonathan Love
Not.
is the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in
Yeah,
that game.
we got it at the same
So
time. I mean, oh, sad face. All right, well, I'm wrong.
yeah, yeah. So I guess the first thing that he's got credited here is the micro series.
Has to be the micro series. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I was wrong.
We were both wrong, sir.
Yeah,
About, you know,
yeah.
hey, we learned
But
and we can move on, you know.
he's basically been the voice of Obi-Wan since then. So,
It's
awesome.
20 years if you think about it. 20
Oh my
years.
god. Well, I mean, he's got more hours than anybody with that character, right? By a long
Yeah,
shot.
for sure.
Just with the Clone Wars alone, he's got more hours than anybody. But then, video games, Star Wars Rebels, audiobooks, because there's a handful of times that he's voiced Obi-Wan in an audiobook. Yeah, I mean, anytime you're gonna get anytime you're gonna do Obi-Wan Kenobi anything, you should just get James Arnold Taylor to do it if Ewan isn't available. And I think that James would agree. You go to Ewan first, and if Ewan says no, then you go to James.
And then
Uh,
third will be Stephen Stanton as Alec Guinness, right?
oh yeah. If
That's
you need that Alec Guinness Obi-Wan, James does a good Alec Guinness Obi-Wan. It's pretty good, but it still sounds like him. And the Ewan creeps in, right? But even then, like by the time that Clone Wars is done, his Obi-Wan has a life of its own. It's no longer an Ewan
Mhm.
sound alike. If you go back and you listen to the micro series, he's very much doing a sound alike, right? And in the video game, in the episode 3 video game, he is definitely, is it him? I'm pretty sure it's him. He's doing like a sound alike, or whoever did the voice in that game was doing like a sound alike to sound
Pretty
like
sure
him.
because during his on stage one man show, he will always say the line, "You were my brother, Anakin," and it
Yeah,
would come out constantly. So I
yeah,
think
he did. Yeah,
it's
he did the Revenge of the Sith video game as well as Battlefront 2. He voiced Obi-Wan in both of
there you go.
those, and yeah, he's very much doing like an Ewan impression there, as opposed to like when we get into Clone Wars season 1, it's a little bit there, but like as we get into like season 3 and 4, it's almost like he's had the character for so long at that point. And I mean, like when we get into season 5, when you get into the Mandalorian stuff in season 5,
Mm,
that character belongs to him at that point, right? Like the performance that James does with that character in that season is some of the best Obi-Wan storytelling that we've gotten. And I would have said, like, prior to this show, I would have said it's better than anything in the prequels. Or not better than anything with it is better than anything in the prequels. I would have said it's better than anything that Ewan did, and then Ewan comes back and does this and like delivers without a doubt some of the best Obi-Wan Kenobi moments, and they're in this episode.
for sure.
But yeah, so that fight between the two of them is a great fight. I like it just the ebb and flow of it, right? Of like Vader seems to have the upper hand. He makes his whole comments about like the strength is returned, but the weakness remains, and we get the moment with Obi-Wan underground, and this is
Mm,
his moment of rebirth. This is when the old Obi-Wan dies. This is when Ben Kenobi dies, right? And Obi-Wan is reborn. He comes back. And we get the inner monologue going, but it's not actually his inner monologue. It's just the voices of Anakin and Vader that are kind of haunting him. And that's where the weakness is. That's the doubt, right? He's being weighed down. He's being crushed under the weight of that
mhm.
guilt. And then we have the flash of Leia followed by Luke and the two of them and his responsibility to them, and this idea of like them being the future, and that's what he's fighting for. And that's when he just like it's the difference is night and day, right? I mean, like he bursts out of the ground and he's just ready to destroy Vader, or has the capacity to do it, at least like the ability.
Mm.
um and we get the great God Obi-Wan moment of like when he hits God tier, and he just like Vader had thrown like some rocks on him, and Obi-Wan like basically lifts the surface of the planet and starts hucking it at Vader. And
He
it's
has
just
all the
like,
rocks.
yeah, it's it's it the jokes back then, like a year ago, of like I Vader learning from him with the high ground, right? And so he collapses the ground underneath him. And then Obi-Wan being like you fool, like I am the high ground. And that's like the rocks are all like in the air, and you're like, no, yeah, he is, Obi-Wan is the high ground.
Oh, that's awesome. I never heard that.
Yeah,
That's
no,
funny.
it's so good. And then from that point on, Obi-Wan just like uh, almost toys with him at a certain point, and then cuts the mask, and we get the great moment. So one of the best scenes in Star Wars now.
It's perfection. It's
Uh,
absolute perfection.
yeah, where Obi-Wan apologizes and Ewan gives the most heart wrenching performance as Obi-Wan Kenobi in this moment, when he says that he's sorry for all of it, and Vader replies, this writing is so good. It's so good. Because the line, "I'm not your failure,
Hmm.
Obi-Wan," right? It's just like, it's there's like a there's this weird arrogance in the way that Vader talks about it. And he smiles when he says, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker," right? And like he says that, and then even though we can't see his mouth, we can see sort of like the curl of the lip and like the effect of it on
Hmm.
his eye. And he says, "I did," right?
Yeah, the
And
cheek moves a little bit. Yeah,
yeah,
you see
and
the
there's
smile.
just like, and again, it's like these two are at the top of their game. Like you want to talk about redemption for Hayden Christensen. It's just like, I don't even think it's redemption. I just think it's validation of like, no, this is what this guy had in him all along. It's not that we went away for 20 years and he learned how to be a better actor. I mean, like, I'm sure that he improved his craft along the way. But it's not like he was super busy, you guys, which is, it sucks. I mean, like, he fell into the same pit that that Mark Hamill did, right? Of like, you're that character and you're just labeled as that character forever. And especially with the way that the prequels were received, and then Jumper
Right.
didn't help anything, right? Like that, he shouldn't have made that movie. But that's not like, again, like, that's not his performance. Jumper's just a bad movie, and every once in a while, actors make bad movies. I guess it's no good coming off of the prequels to do Jumper as your follow up to it. Not that it was, he did other stuff, but anyways, he's always
It.
had this in him. He's always had these chops to perform in this way. But it's also like, the key to it is that the writing is so good and the directing is so good. I mean, like, Deborah Chow is getting the best out of these actors. And you could tell that that was the case, and that everybody enjoyed the process, because like during the press junkets and at Star Wars Celebration, you could tell that there was a real um closeness between all of them, between the four of them that were on all of the press junkets, because it was Deborah Chow, Ewan, Hayden, and Moses Ingram. And you could really just tell, like, that they got along really well, and that it was a good experience. It was a positive experience, which is always nice, because sometimes worry about stuff. But yeah, I mean, like that, all of that, the "I'm sorry, Anakin," for all of it, and then him with the, like, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did." Like, it's so good, and it cements what Obi-Wan says to Luke in A New Hope. um and it makes that, which I just love. I love going back and watching that scene every time something new comes out, and we watch that stuff, and it's like, there's so much, there's so much in what Alec Guinness says there. And that's the brilliance of Alec Guinness's performance, is that none of this existed. All
No.
he knew was what was on the page, and what George basically told him, which was like, "You're sad about this, like, this is a melancholy thing." And Alec delivers all of that But now when we go back and watch, it's as if it's written into the script. It's as if he knows and he's thinking about all of these things. It's amazing how that has worked. Um, that with like every layer that we get, everything that we get in the prequels, and then everything we get in the Clone Wars, and then Star Wars Rebels adds another layer onto it when we see him with Ahsoka, and and we get the little bit of Obi-Wan that we get in Star Wars Rebels, right? With Maul, and then the Obi-Wan series, just like, I mean, like, it just, that scene is doing so much heavy lifting in A New Hope now that it was not responsible for in 1977. Certainly not 1976 when they were filming it, right? Like, it just, I don't know. That's just it. That's the magic of Star Wars. That's when Star Wars really works, when it's at its best. And I say this all the time. Like good Star Wars is fun, right? There's lots of good Star Wars. There's lots of bad Star Wars, but there's lots of good Star Wars out there as well. But great Star Wars makes other Star Wars better. Like, that's the distinction, is that the great Star Wars stories are the ones that, and they don't even have to be about core characters. They can be about any aspect of the galaxy. Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor are really great examples of this, because Cal's story is, although Vader intersects with it, he's really not an important part of it. But Cal's story enriches so much of Star Wars. And having Marin in there is a big part of that, and it adds so much to the galaxy. But like, that's what I'm talking about, is like, when you do that, and then, like, Star Wars Rebels, which is a series other than, Ahsoka coming in and Vader coming in and Darth Maul and all that. Like, certainly there are a lot of connections into the original trilogy and into the prequels, because it bridges those gaps. But um, just think about, like, the world between worlds, and think about the Bendu, and just all of that. It's like, Star Wars Rebels did so much to add so many elements to Star Wars that I think people take for granted, especially people who didn't bother watching the show.
Mm.
Because there are a lot of people who haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, who consider themselves hardcore Star Wars fans, that were like, no, this is too. There were a lot of people who didn't watch Clone Wars when it started. Like, go into the archive, go listen to early episodes of Frontlines, and I'm like, I don't understand why people aren't watching this show. Like, there was a whole dialogue the first, like, 3 seasons of that show, where it was like, no one's watching this, no one's talking about this. This is some of the best Star Wars we've ever gotten. It's wild to me. And then people eventually got on board with Clone Wars. It got canceled, and Rebels came out with this completely different art style that was much more bright and colorful and cartoony, and they were like, this is a stupid kid show, and didn't watch it, and haven't watched it to this day. And it's like, well, you're gonna regret that. You're gonna regret that in about a month and a half. You're gonna regret, actually, it's like 6 weeks at this point. Like, you are really, really gonna feel bad about having missed out on all of this storytelling, because Ahsoka is going to go right over your head. Because I
Yeah.
guarantee Dave's not stopping. He's not going to stop and explain what happened with Kanan. There will be lines about it. There will be stuff that directly addresses what happened with Kanan. We're not going to stop and go like, well, the sacrifice that Kanan made, blah, blah, and like go beat by beat of like the relationship between Kanan and Hera. There's going to be like a blink and you miss it line about Jason's father, and about Jason having the same sort of, spirit or whatever, right? Like, and we're gonna move on, but it's gonna be very much like a bittersweet thing of like, yeah, if only he were still alive, right?
Mm.
And if you didn't watch Star Wars Rebels, pff, man, it's gonna mean nothing to you. It's gonna mean nothing. Can you imagine if we see the Loth Wolf, like, not a Loth Wolf, but that one, right? Like Doom, like
Yeah.
the big one. If we see that in live action, I will lose my mind, dude. I will lose my mind. And I don't know that that's necessarily a season 1 thing. I think that's like cuz season 1's going to be getting to Ezra. I think eventually when Ezra comes back to Lothal that we could get that moment. We could get a moment where we just even just see it off in the distance, right? But the idea that we could see that the essence of that character on screen in live action is like, oh yeah, let's do it. Come on, I want it. I need it.
Don't underestimate Dave, man. I mean,
I don't. I don't. I mean, like they could very well get to wherever it is that Ezra is, and like, and like they have to find him. Like I can imagine that they're on some dead looking planet, and they're in a creepy forest, and and like they just see like the silhouette of this giant loth wolf in the
mm,
like off in the distance that they have to follow, and it's like, oh, Kanan's there and he's leading them to Ezra, right? Like, because that is, and again, like this is stuff that if you didn't watch Rebels, none of this is gonna mean anything to you. Anyways,
right.
um,
Couple
Obi-Wan
things
Kenobi.
a couple things about the fight that I wanted to
Yeah,
say. Get your thoughts on. Obviously, we kind of talked about that moment. The higher ground moment was great. One thing that I kind of noticed, kind of watching it in this rewatch, was after that moment, after he throws him underground and walks away, and kind of a combination of like what happened with like Reva. Vader keeps stabbing Reva, keeps coming back, but with Obi-Wan, keeps thinking that he's done. Dragging him through the fire in Episode 3, burying him, keeps coming back, keeps coming back. It almost kind of retroactively kind of makes that kind of funny moment in A New Hope kind of work, where Obi-Wan, he swipes at Obi-Wan and he finally does perish, and he steps on his robes. It's like he's gone, right? He's finally gone. Like,
yeah,
kind of makes that moment actually kind of ring a little bit more true because of this, where it's just like, this guy will not just die, you know.
Hmm.
So I kind of kind of felt that this time watching it, where Obi-Wan keeps coming back, and overall the visual storytelling with this scene back and forth between Anakin and Obi-Wan, Vader and Obi-Wan, and how while Obi-Wan is pouring his heart out, apologizing for everything, it's the entire visual language that we're seeing is colored in blue. The blue lightsaber is taking over the entire frames. You got Obi-Wan's face in blue, we got Vader's face in blue, and then as soon as he says that you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did, the red comes up to both of them, and it just shows
Yeah,
the darkness visually, which I really appreciated. And then, of course, the final moment, um, so my friend is truly dead, and then goodbye, Darth. Like, completely just bringing Return of the Jedi back, full circle with those references, and the Darth when Alec Guinness was just calling the bad guy by the first name, because that's what it was back then in the 70s. It wasn't
yeah,
a title for a Sith. It was Darth Vader, that was just his first name because he was Darth Vader. So it's just kind of bringing everything all together, and just that beautiful Luke line, being used again, but instead of my father, it's so my friend is truly dead. Just beautiful overall. But those are my thoughts on the fight. But did you want to move on to the final moment with, or the final sequence with Tatooine?
yeah. I think so. Yeah. So Obi-Wan basically leaves there and then senses that Luke is in danger. Makes his way back to Tatooine, lands at the homestead, and finds that Owen and Beru are just hollering out into the Dune Sea, um, not really sure what to do, right? And then Reva, we had the moment, we haven't really talked about it with Reva, where she's gotten Luke, knocked him out, and he's unconscious and
Yep.
at her mercy, and she and we don't, I mean, obviously we know that she doesn't kill Luke Skywalker, but we don't see it, we don't see what happens, right? She raises the lightsaber and then we kind of cut away, but there's this inner conflict, right? That she sees the child in front of her as herself as a child, and then she sees herself as Anakin, right? And has that moment of inner conflict, and we don't know, like, is she going to give into that the way that Anakin did, or is she going to fight it? And so when she returns with like this limp body of Luke Skywalker, it's funny, if you were watching things in chronological order, you would be worried, right? Um, in the way that Owen and Beru are very worried that something has happened to Luke,
For sure.
and but he is alive. He stirs, and everybody kind of starts breathing again, and I and then Obi-Wan
Such
and
a
Reva.
oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just such a great, a brilliant directed moment, because again, playing close to the chest with these characters, and obviously we know that Luke is okay, but like let's play in these moments, like let's have Reva come out of the darkness, and you have these same characters where you have Owen and Beru looking out, and it calls back to Attack of the Clones where Anakin came back with a dead Shmi,
Mm-hmm.
and Reva's holding Luke in the same way, which was just great. And then you play these moments, you string these moments along a little bit without having to cut to flashbacks, because that's it could be used as a cheap trick. It wasn't used as a cheap trick in the last episode, but I digress. And we get into this moment where, is he alive? Because these characters don't. So this is the world that we're living in, and then he has that first breath, that moan, the relief on their faces is just fantastic. And there is no word spoken between Owen and Reva. He just picks up his son in this moment and just goes back to the homestead, and that's it. And that's the moment, and it's just a beautiful moment for these characters, and Reva too, to come to terms with who she actually is. She's not a monster. She tries to be. She'll sever her hand in the marketplace, but she's not a monster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it mirrors Kylo Ren, right? We talked about this of like the pull back to the light. That's the conflict for her. It's not this pull to the dark side. It's actually the light side is kind of constantly creeping in, and beckoning her back because it's where she belongs. So I again, great writing. Where she's like, "Have I become him?" And Obi-Wan's, no, because you chose not to, right? Like, and that's it. That's all it takes. Like, you simply chose not to. Whereas like what he just experienced was that Anakin had the opportunity, defeated and broken in front of Obi-Wan, as Obi-Wan apologized, to take that apology, right? And he doesn't. He doubles down on it, and he's like, "Nope, I'm Darth Vader. Like your friend is dead. Like, I am Darth Vader. I killed Anakin Skywalker." He made the choice to stay in the dark side, and it's gonna take more for Anakin to return, and we know when that happens. But yeah, for Reva, it's this was her turning point, where she either follows the dark path or she returns to the light, and she's just out there, man. She's out there somewhere in the story,
Yep.
which I just think is such an interesting aspect that, again, I don't know what happened with this show, because it's so good and everybody was enjoying it, and then all of a sudden it just kind of like disappeared. And then Andor came out, and once Andor came out, everybody was like, that Obi-Wan series was terrible. And it's like, what are you guys talking about? Because every week we were like talking online about how great that episode was, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, because Andor is this dystopian bummer, police state examination of authoritarian overreach, blah blah blah, it's like, I, yeah, Andor is really good. It doesn't take anything away from this or Young Jedi Adventures, right? Like none of these things that are different are lesser because they're different. They're all just different, right? I mean, like, man, there are some stories on uh uh YouTube, on Star Wars Kids YouTube, that I most people are probably not familiar with, but that if you've got kids, you are. And there are these characters. One of them shows up in Young Jedi Adventures, because there are these little short videos about the different alien species of the galaxy, like the different creatures and races and whatever. And they're great. They're great little shorts, and they star these droids, this like pair of droids. One of them shows up in Young Jedi Adventures, and like, because my girls watched those shorts on YouTube and then watched Young Jedi Adventures, when that droid, it's like SF3E or something like that. It's like Safari is basically his name. Because he's got like a pith helmet. He looks kind of like a pit droid, but a little bit like chunkier.
Yeah.
And he goes out into the galaxy and basically does like a nature show for everybody about like, oh, these are tauntauns, these are rancors, right? Like, to teach you all about the different alien species in the galaxy, the different creatures. And he shows up in an episode of Young Jedi Adventures, and Kara was like, "That's the." She didn't know his name because it's not like everybody like addresses him every episode or whatever. But she's like, "That's the droid from the animal cartoons," and it was like, "Yeah, it is." And I was like, this is what Star Wars is about, right? But like the point of that is that like Andor being Andor does not make those shorts bad because they're for kids, right? It doesn't make Obi-Wan bad because Obi-Wan, like, Andor is a prequel to Rogue One, and Rogue One is a different type of Star Wars movie from the rest of the Star Wars movies. So Andor is a different type of show. And Andor is doing it much better than Rogue One did it, I think, in my opinion, but only because of the fact that Andor is focused and Rogue One got noted to death by the studio. But whatever. In which like they completely rewrite Jin's character in Act 3 of that movie,
In the third
and
act. Yeah.
it just totally undermined everything that came before it. But whatever. But Obi-Wan is not, just because it takes place in the same time period as Andor, roughly, right? I mean, like in the Dark Times, right?
Mm.
It does not need to have the same tone. It's not occupying the same space in the storytelling. Obi-Wan is a sequel to the prequels, right?
Yep.
Like it's
like a bridge between the prequels and the original trilogy, but it's definitely
exactly.
like, I mean, the previously on, like if you were to pop this movie,
Yeah,
if this was a show on Netflix, the previously on is the prequel trilogy. So like this is a direct sequel. This
exactly.
is a episode 3.5. And I hate
Yeah,
the idea of raising something and making something less because just by comparison. That's like, no, both could be equally great in different ways. So
exactly. And for me, Obi-Wan is much stronger than Andor because Andor is missing fundamental elements of Star Wars. Like they're just absent. There is no fun, there is no lightheartedness, there is very little hope. It is like hope is actually like a bad thing in Andor. Every time somebody has hope, it ends up getting them in trouble, right?
or they can't
um
swim.
yeah, well, it's a very like, hope leads to despair in Andor more often than not. And that is not, again, that this is not to take anything away from it. Andor is a phenomenal show. I just think it's a much better Blade Runner series than it is a Star Wars series. Whereas, like,
Mm.
I look at the trailer for Ahsoka, and it's like, no, Ahsoka's got everything. Like the little droid that we see in the E-wing is a little comedic moment, and that sort of stuff is absent from Andor, but it's not absent from Obi-Wan, right? I mean, like Lola as a character, like this little droid that Leia has is is an aspect of that. There are alien characters throughout it. There are very few alien characters in Andor, right? Yeah, it just, I don't know, for me it doesn't hit the same way. It's very, very good, but it's a bunch of people talking to each other. It's not is That's not necessarily what I want. Even the droid that they do have is like a bummer of a droid. Oh my god,
He's
B2 is.
emo.
I
B2
feel
emo.
so bad for B2 just for his existence. Um, but anyways, I like, for me, like, I don't know, there are integral parts of Star Wars that are missing in Andor, and everybody seems to just overlook it and go, this is what all Star Wars should be like. And I cannot get on board with that idea, because I need to have things like Young Jedi Adventures exist. I need to have those YouTube shorts exist. It's important. Star Wars is not for adults. It is for kids. It should, as far as I'm concerned, it should always be for kids. And I think that when you steer it away from that into Rogue One and Andor territory, that you are losing what makes Star Wars Star Wars. Like, you're losing the magic. And you're just going into sci-fi. And I love sci-fi. I love hard sci-fi. I love Blade Runner, right? Like, I love Blade Runner. Um I think I actually probably love Blade Runner more than the average person, because, like, I've got they did a Blu-ray when it first came out on Blu-ray. They did a special edition version of it that came in, like, the suitcase that Deckard has, like, inside it's got like a little model of the spinner, and it's got the little it's plastic. It's not actually like an origami, but it's like an origami of the unicorn that Edward
Mm.
James Olmos's character leaves at the end of the movie. And it's got every version that they've ever released of Blade
All
Runner,
5 cuts, right?
all 5 cuts, and I've watched every single one.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched every single one, and I can tell you which one is my favorite and why. Right? And I mean, it's the final cut. The final cut's the best one, but it's for obvious reasons.
As it
But
should. The final cut should be the best
it should be,
one.
right. But that said, I mean, like, there are things about the original theatrical, in particular, like the synth score in its fullness is, I mean, like, that should never be touched, never, ever. But anyways, and I like some of the voiceover and monologue stuff. I like those aspects, and I know that some people don't like that stuff from the various cuts of Blade Runner. My point being that, like I am down for that stuff. I even, like, okay, so there is a Blade Runner TV series, but it's actually called 20 Recall, or sorry, Total Recall 2049. And it's billed as a Total Recall series, but it's actually a Blade Runner series. Because it is about, I mean, like, Recall also factors into it, but it's about a detective, and his partner is a replicant, right? Like, and Recall is, and so it basically bridges the gap between Total Recall and Blade Runner, and puts them in the same universe, which they are, by the way. They are. And the Alien movies are also in that universe. So which then makes the Predator movies also technically part of that universe, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But Total Recall and Blade Runner are connected because of Philip K. Dick, right? So, like, he wrote both of those stories, and so that's where the connection is there initially. But that series, which, I mean, like, a fair number of people, it's a pretty well known sort of cult classic, from the late '90s on sci-fi, but I like, I love that series. I've seen every episode multiple times, um, in large part because it was filmed here in Vancouver. So it's like, it's one of
Mhm.
those things of like, oh, this is a Canadian production. I love it.
Hmm.
I I mean, most of the
Represent.
series on sci-fi in the '90s were filmed in Vancouver, by the way. Just like how most of the CW is filmed in Vancouver these days. But yeah, like, I love that stuff, but that's not what I go to Star Wars for. Like, they are for different purposes. And so when I go to Star Wars, I expect, like, high adventure, I expect fantasy mixed with science fiction. I don't expect I you know, like I expect a little bit of politics, but I don't expect nearly as much politics as what's in Andor. I don't expect nearly as much hopelessness and despair as what's in Andor. It bums me out, and I need droids, and I need aliens, and I need like ridiculous set pieces, which Andor has a couple, but I mean, like so much of that series is just people talking to each other. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just it's one of those things that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Of like I just really firmly believe that Star Wars serves a purpose, and because they tried this in the early 2000s with like the horror novels that they did, like the stormtrooper zombie stuff, and it's just like I don't know, but I think like that's what it comes down to is like the expanded universe, and I'm talking about like what's now called the Legends canon, right? I think because it primarily existed in novels, and a 300-page novel is primarily the uh the ecosystem of adults, or at least like teenagers and adults, that Star Wars moved from the 80s as like kid and family films into this other zone where like even like with the Thrawn trilogy, which is the thing that really starts the expanded universe, is like you immediately go into like these ideas that are this stuff is not for kids, right? And
Right.
and so I think like it gave everybody this sense that Star Wars was for grown-ups, because for many years between which actually, I mean, really, it's not that long. It's not that long. You're talking about it. You said the Thrawn trilogy is 92. Is that's when the first one comes out, and Dark Empire is around the same time, right? In the comics, is
Yeah, I
maybe
believe so.
like a year before that, or if not, like at the exact same time, right? These two stories that like pick up post Return of the Jedi and carry on the story, and I actually no. Is that where the World Devastators come from? Is it from Dark Empire? It's not from Heir to the
I don't
Empire, is it?
remember.
It's from Dark Empire. It's from Dark Empire. I
Heir to,
said earlier in the episode it's from Heir to the Empire,
Heir to the
from the
Empire
Thrawn
was
trilogy.
published in 1991, by the way. May
91.
1st.
So
91, man.
so
Whew.
the special editions come out in 97, and by the time that the special editions are out, George is working on they've started casting and filming the Phantom
Mhm.
Menace in 1997. So, like by 99, 8 years later, it's only 8 years, right? Think about where we were 8 years ago. It's 2023. If we go back to 8 years, I mean, like that's the beginning of the acquisition, right? Like, it's not when the acquisition happened, because that's 2012, but like that, like 2015 is when everything started hitting, right?
Mhm.
Think about how much content we've gotten in the last 8 years. Think about the 8 years prior to that, the 8 years prior to that, the 8 years prior to that, right?
I mean, Rebels started in 2014, so that's 9 years ago. I mean,
Yeah,
that's where we're at right now, guys. Like 2015 December will be Force Awakens. So yeah,
yeah, exactly.
2023.
Yeah, it's wild. Time is just a thing that never stops. But yeah, I like there like we act like it's this massive swath of time, and I mean the expanded universe continues on after the prequels come out, right? But the prequels come out and it's like, oh, Star Wars is for kids again. But what happened when the prequels came out? All of these people who were kids when they saw Star Wars, and then these novels came out when they were teenagers or young adults, walked into the movie theater expecting the Phantom Menace to be Heir to the Empire, and it's not, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's a Star Wars movie, it's a kids movie, and George made kids movies. The stories are meant to be for kids to learn what it means to be a good person. Like that's what Star Wars is. Like that's why it exists. they're morality tales, they're fairy tales. And then when something doesn't treat it like a fairy tale, it just bugs me. It just bugs me. But Dave gets it, and so Ahsoka is going to be good, and Deborah Chow absolutely got it, which is why like Leia has Lola, because she has to have a little companion. She has to like, it's just, she's a princess, she has to have a little bird that she talks to. And for those who don't know, Lola is named after a bird that Carrie Fisher had when she was a little girl. Like, so Lola is designed to be a little songbird. That's from the chirps and stuff to the little feet, and the way that the wings come. She's kind of like Lola is kind of a butterfly bird droid hybrid, right? Like she kind of like has all of these elements that come together, which is great. Star Wars design brings together multiple things, right? But the reason why she's named Lola is that connection to Carrie Fisher, and the idea that like Princess Leia has a little, like a Disney princess has a little bird that she talks to, right? That's her best friend, right? Just like
Great.
Snow White, or Sleeping Beauty, or any of, or Cinderella talking to mice, right? Like it is the Star Wars equivalent of that. So Deborah Chow gets it. This is a fairy tale, right? Like it is absolutely a fairy tale.
Yeah, she's not singing into a well. She's naming off starships, in
Yeah,
the trees.
exactly. Um, and I mean, like even stuff like the beginning of the season with Obi-Wan and the like his job, and it's like this giant manta ray in the sand, right? I It's fantastical, and
That's Star Wars.
that stuff's not in Andor. It's not. I just it
Yeah,
I don't know. It just, there's simple stuff like that that they that they don't. It doesn't even have to be part of the story. It just needs to exist in the world, right? Um,
yeah. The prison is definitely definitely leans more towards like the sci-fi. It is fantastical for Star Wars, but it's the depressing side. It's the
mhm.
hopeless side. As great as the prison is, but and then go back to the other arcs in there. You got your heists and whatnot. The Eye is quite beautiful. And
It's that is one of like the saving graces of the series for me, is like that moment is very much like, that's a very Star Wars thing, right? Of
yeah,
like, but then they end up turning it, and it's like it becomes dangerous, right? It's the thing that covers their escape, and it's great for the heist plan, but it's like it turns a thing of wonder into a thing of terror, and it's like, oh man. But that's what I'm talking about with Andor, is that just every opportunity that it has to take
the,
something
yeah,
hopeful, it turns it into despair. And that's like, in that, like, as we're experiencing that thing of beauty, uh the oh, what's this, I can't remember the character's name, um the guy with the manifesto is dying, right? Like it's like, oh, it was like a whole thing. So anyways.
yeah. I forget his name. Yeah, let's call the timekeeper the most Star Wars Andor gets.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
timekeeper was pretty awesome.
um but I We'll get back into Obi-Wan here. So we've got a couple more scenes left, right? We've got Obi-Wan has to go. He goes to Alderaan, right? We get the little suit up scene with Leia where she's modifying her outfit to be a little bit. She's a little bit princess, a little bit rebel. This is the beginning of it, right? And we've got, it's the great line of um, with her father, where she's like, I understand now, but we're gonna change a few things. And he just has, I mean, like, man, Bail Organa is such a good dad. I wish I was half as good a dad as Bail Organa. He turns to her and he says, well, then let's change them together. And I just like, that's when I like this, that is the moment every time that I watch it, now that I'm talking about it, like when I start crying, right? That's when the tears start. And then Obi-Wan shows up. She's like, so who are we meeting today? More cousins? And he's like, well, not quite. And then Obi-Wan steps off the ship, and her face lights up, and you're just like, every time I watch it, this is the point. This is why this series exists. Leia deserved her origin story. We thought we were gonna get an Obi-Wan Kenobi story, and it was actually a Trojan horse. Like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is actually about Leia. Obi-Wan, it is also about Obi-Wan. It's about the two of them, and the way that they help each other learn and grow. She brings him out of the darkness and back into the light, and he brings her out into the wider galaxy in the same way that he's going to do with Luke in a few years, right?
Right.
But this is the beginning of her adventure. Because when we meet Leia, she's already in it, right? Like she's had her hero's journeys, right? Like she's had multiple at that point. She has learned so much. She is more seasoned than either Luke or Han, right? When she takes that blaster rifle from Luke and says somebody's got to save our skins. Like she
Mm-hmm.
takes control of the situation, and that how did she get there? That's why this story exists. It's to say that like Leia was always, and it's retroactive, right? But Leia was always as important as Luke. Always. And it's actually like shame on us for never thinking that, right? For getting to a point where we go like, well, Luke's the central character. No, he's not. Luke is not the central character. Luke and Leia are the central characters of Star Wars, right? So when you get to the Last Jedi and people get mad because Luke isn't the character that they wanted him to be, and they want him to walk out and face down the whole First Order himself, which by the way he does at the end of the movie, so you got what you wanted, but whatever. Because Ryan Johnson is a genius. He tells you what you don't, what you actually don't need, but then he gives it to you anyways. Whole other thing, but we get there and it's like the focus becomes Luke for some reason. It's like, but this isn't Luke's story. It's never been Luke's story. Luke has a story. He has his own story, but his story and Leia's story are the same story, right? Like it just, I don't know. I think the more people can realize that, the happier they'll be as Star Wars fans, especially with the sequel trilogy. But
Yeah.
I mean, not with Rise of Skywalker, because Rise of Skywalker doesn't do a service to anybody in that film.
Sure.
But
Yeah, we
but
established that.
yeah, except maybe like 3PO gets some good moments, but everybody else kind of gets the short stick. Um,
Yeah,
but
Luke
like
got his origin story in the original trilogy.
yeah,
Leia got her origin story in this one. You know, like this,
yeah,
and how what a beautiful way to do that. You know, like you said, Trojan Horse, the show where you have Obi-Wan. Everyone's going to be focusing on Obi-Wan, but then for years. I mean, we've been wanting a story about Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan in the desert since 2005, and when we finally get it, for this entire time we've been thinking like, oh, it's gonna be a story where he's taking out some Tuskens, or there's something going on in a farm on Tatooine because he can't leave
yeah,
Tatooine. Well, why not?
yeah.
Well, what's the reason? Leia. And why not? Because Leia, we haven't had an origin story visually on the screen for Leia. Let's do that, and I really appreciate the Lucasfilm and the team to do that
Yep.
with Leia. She's just as important.
And listen, I don't think that that's what the story was when they set out to make this show. And I think that like that original story that they were like ready to shoot and then they stopped and they changed the whole thing.
Mm.
I don't think Leia was part of it. I wouldn't be surprised if we learn one day from somebody that like that original story didn't have Leia in it at all. It was just about Obi-Wan and Anakin. And then they got, and then I mean if anybody did it, if anybody is responsible for it, I'll bet you anything it was Deborah Chow. I bet you anything that when she became director for it, which is a thing that happened later in the game, right? Because you have to remember that the Obi-Wan series was one of the first things that Lucasfilm started doing when Kathleen Kennedy took over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Ewan lied to us for like 6 years before they told us that this was happening, right? Before it was confirmed that this show was happening. Because it was like, we know now that it was like one of the first phone calls that got made. was like to Ewan of like, are you like, if we want to do this, are you down? Yes, you are. Okay, well then we'll start. Right, we'll find writers. We'll get this going. And and Deborah Chow was not a part of anything until after she had done some directing on The Mandalorian, right? And and so I think that once they got to the point where she was attached, I think that the series became what it became. And I wouldn't be surprised if Leia entered the story at that point, because it was a bunch of men prior to that. It was a bunch of men writing the story prior to that, and then all of a sudden Deborah Chow shows up, and it's like, and now we know that, like, well, the series is actually a series about Princess Leia. It's like, well, this is not a coincidence as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, you got this. I mean, like, it's just, I think it's just important to have women in the room for these reasons, right? So that we can get stories that are more than just, certainly, and not just women, but like people of color and people of different gender expression, sexual identities, all of that stuff in writers' rooms, especially for Star Wars, so that we can get more diverse stories, and so that other characters who have not gotten their opportunity to shine can get their opportunity to shine. I mean, like, Ahsoka's coming. I'm excited about it. The thing that I'm the most excited about right now is probably Acolyte. That series is going to be a breath of fresh air, I think, for Star Wars fans. It's going to take us in a new direction, and it's gonna open up a lot of stuff that I think has been off limits for Star Wars. Um, Stuff that they should have done in Rise of Skywalker, but they were cowards and didn't want to do because they were worried it was going to affect the opening of that movie if they committed to certain things. So they just put it in the background, and it was easy to cut out for other audiences, for foreign markets, which is just it's just cowardly as far as I'm concerned. Uh, Finn and Poe
Yeah,
should have been romantic in Rise of Skywalker. It's there in The Last Jedi. It's 1,000% there in the Last Jedi. Which would, like, I think came out of sort of the meme of that moment in The Force Awakens. I don't think that it was necessarily there in The Force Awakens. I think they do have a good meet cute in The Force Awakens of like, I'm here to break you out. You need a pilot. I need a pilot. Like, it's so good. Like, it's so, the two of them from the beginning is so good. And if that turned into a romantic story, then it would have been perfect, right? There's still a chance. There's still a chance. I still hold out hope. But I but Acolyte, I think, will probably go there. It'll probably have some of that type of storytelling in it. Um, and I don't think to make a point. I think just because it's like, well, let's just, like, if these characters can be anything, why can't they be this?
yeah. It's again going back to the, instead of saying why, how about why not?
Exactly. And it's, I mean, it's the reaction that everybody has to all of this stuff, which is like, I mean, like, even already today with the Ahsoka trailer, you got a bunch of fragile male egos being like, how come Sabine is the lead character? She's not a Jedi. And they're like, they're saying all of this stuff, and it's just like, how about you just wait and watch the show? How about you see what the story is before you start telling us that it's a bad story because it's about a woman? Like, just settle down. But they lack vision. They lack creativity. They lack the ability to see themselves in a female character, because that would make them gay, right? Like, that's, like, just to put an absolute fine point on it, that's the reaction, which in their minds, because they have fragile male egos, is the worst possible thing that you could be, when in reality it's not anything, right? It should, or I mean, it is, because our society makes it a thing. It shouldn't be. Everybody should be free to feel however they feel about whoever they want to feel it about, right? As long as you're not hurting anybody, everything is fair game, right?
Yeah,
In terms of sexual identity, gender expression, all that sort of thing. I think people understand what I'm talking about, but it's like, it is just this thing, and some of the backlash on the Obi-Wan series was they just wanted to see two guys fight each other. They just wanted 6 episodes of Obi-Wan and Anakin dueling, right? Like that's
So
what they
boring.
thought they were gonna get, and it's like some of us would like actually good stories, um, but that inability to see yourself in these in these different types of characters, you just you limit your ability to learn and grow when you do that. Like that is my word of advice to anybody out there who has been feeling that way and maybe hasn't realized it until this moment, until I'm saying it, because nobody's like expressed it to you in that way. But I will tell you from my experience as a man who is generally, for the most part, cisgender heterosexual. I am mostly white, and I am a male. So, I like that's my experience in the when I go out into the world. That's how people perceive me. So I definitely benefit from the privilege of all of those things, despite what the reality might be for me. Um, as a younger man, I like those that male fragility was all there for me as well, and I anytime anybody questioned masculinity or anything like that, it ruffled my feathers. But as I get older and realize that like actually like none of that matters. Like other people's perception of your masculinity is the least important thing. It is so inconsequential. I mean, it's not true for everybody. Some people are in certain lines of work where it is an important aspect of it, but only because the construct of our society has made it that way, right? But the more you can escape from those like binaries, dichotomies, and sort of like these structures that we've put in place, the happier you'll be. Like, trust me on that one. And the more fun things are. Like that's the thing is that listen, if you're watching TV and all you can get excited about are the pretty ladies on screen, if you just let go of the like, oh, if I say that man is attractive, that makes me gay, and if I'm gay, then that's the worst possible thing that I could be. If you can get away from that and go, does it matter? What difference does it make? What difference does it make if I am attracted to this guy or that guy or any of that sort of thing? And then you get to just enjoy so much more of media because you can be like, man, just put Oscar Isaac in anything. It doesn't matter to me. I'm there. I will show up on day one. X-Men Apocalypse, maybe not so much. Is you put him in a bunch of blue paint. You got the prettiest man on the planet, and you make him grotesque, and then you don't even give him a good script to work with. Oh man, it's just the worst. But any other Oscar Isaac story, any other Oscar Isaac movie, TV show, whatever. I mean, like Marvel, genius. Here's 3 Oscar Isaacs in one show, and I'm just like, thank you so much. Every flavor, it's like somebody saying like, hey, do you want potato chips? And you're like, yes, and they give you barbecue, ketchup, and salt and vinegar. Ketchup chips are a thing in Canada. I know that you Americans don't have ketchup chips. We have them here. I think they have them in the UK, and I think they have them in Australia. They have everywhere else has experienced the glory that is
Never
ketchup
heard of
chips.
them before.
For some reason, you Americans can't get on board with this, which is so interesting to me because ketchup is an American piece of like it's Americana, right? Like a hot dog, a 4th of July hot dog isn't a 4th of July hot dog without ketchup and mustard on it, right? Like I hate ketchup and mustard, but I respect the institution of ketchup and mustard on a hot dog on the 4th of July. Like it's iconic. Like it just and yet you guys don't have ketchup chips. And here's the thing. Ketchup chips are the best chips. They're the best potato chips. All
I
right.
love this tangent.
This is the thing that's been on my list forever is I need to send ketchup chips to Matt Campbell. Which like he's sent me so many care packages from Disneyland, and he's the best, and he is one of the best friends you could ever wish for. He's an amazing human being. I'm saying all of that because I know that he'll listen to this at some point, and he'll hear this, and he'll hear how much I appreciate and love him. And he'll know that like I think about this on a regular basis, that I need to return the favor, but I'm not as good a friend as he is. So like, and that's something that I have to own. But I've thought about it many times, and now I am realizing that, Marty, I have to send you ketchup chips as well.
Yes, please.
At some point.
Well, I
At
mean,
some point.
I'm not even the biggest fan of ketchup either. Like, you were saying about 4th of July. Like, for me, it's like chili cheese dogs and mustard is the first thing I put on there. But that's
Nice.
just me. But yeah, and ketchup's, again, take it or leave it.
I don't
But,
like ketchup, but ketchup chips don't taste like ketchup. That's the thing.
but I've never heard of ketchup chips before. Like,
Yeah.
before you went on this.
I'm gonna let everybody in on a secret. It's gonna sound weird, and it sounds like they don't go together. Ketchup chips, grape soda, and like, look, if all you can find is a grape crush, it'll do the job. But if you can find like a nice local beverage company up here, we have a couple to choose from. There's one called Pop Shop that's basically across Canada. That's really really good. Um, there's one out of like Seattle called Thomas Kemper, which I haven't been able to track down in a long time. But Thomas Kemper soda is some of the best soda on the planet. Oh my god, Thomas Kemper is so good. They have a grape soda and ketchup chips. There are you could go to the fanciest Michelin star blah blah blah. I don't care. A bag of ketchup chips and a grape soda. In particular, I'll be very specific here if people care. Old Dutch, which you guys have Old Dutch down there. I think Old Dutch is a Canadian company.
No.
Okay, so Old Dutch makes chips. It's a company that makes potato chips, and their ketchup chips are the best ketchup chips. Their best ketchup chips. You can get them in kind of three different. There's their regular, just like a regular standard fried potato chip, right? With ketchup flavoring. They have their baked ones, which are the next step up. Is the baked ones are very very good, but the best ones are they have like these like rippled chips, like Ruffles sort of
Mm.
chips. And anytime you're talking about a flavored chip, a Ruffle chip is always going to be better than a flat chip. It's just science. The ridges hold more of the flavoring. I don't care what your flavor is. All dressed. I mean, all dressed is an abomination. Are all dressed a thing that you guys have, or is that a Canadian thing as well? I think all dressed might also be a
So,
Canadian thing.
so I just so I'm doing as you're talking, I'm doing a Google search,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing ketchup chips for the first time. I'm seeing all dressed chips for the first time.
Okay.
This is a whole new world for me.
All dressed are like basically
All Dutch?
taking barbecue, sour cream and onion, and salt and vinegar, and mixing it together into one chip.
Jeez.
I do not like them at all, but I think most of that is because I don't like sour cream and onion chips, which is like the most dominant flavor in that. So,
Interesting.
but anyways, yeah, but yeah, I like you get the Ripple ones, which I think they're like, I think it's called like extra or something like I can't remember what the specific like
There's
subset is
Pringles, there's
called, but
Old Dutch, Harris, Doritos even has a tangy ketchup, but
yeah, yeah,
this
man,
is.
ketchup chips are so good. How
Are
did
we
I
still
even get
recording?
onto ketchup chips? I don't know
You were
how I
going to
got
do an
onto it.
analogy about bringing things together. Anyway, that's what I remembered.
I don't know. I don't know.
Obi,
I was talking about like gender identity
gender.
stuff.
Yes,
And
yes.
somehow I got into ketchup chips. That just totally threw off whatever I was talking about before. But yeah, so yeah, somebody bring you say you want chips and they bring you three different flavors of chips and
Right.
you're like, this is the best. Like I didn't even have to choose, right? And that's what, like, when I was talking about Oscar Isaac,
There you go.
when you open up that perception and you don't let like someone's going to judge me for feeling a certain way, you don't let that affect you, then you're able to dig into all types of stories that you couldn't experience before, and you can experience them from new perspectives, and you can open yourself up to new ideas, new experiences. And that to me is like Star Wars is such a great opportunity to do that, because we're already taking a big leap, right? Lightsabers, spaceships, Wookiees, right? Like the whole thing is ridiculous. So, like relating to the story of a little girl as a grown man in his late 30s, it's like, why not? Right? Which is what you've been saying all episodes. Like, why not? Like, why would you stop yourself from any opportunity that you have to learn and grow in that way and experience something new? It's silly to me. It's silly. But there are a lot of men out there who think that they absolutely have to be this specific thing. They have to and only that one thing. And I can't imagine living in that self-imposed prison, because it is like no one is actually holding you to that. And whatever you discover about yourself and then express however you choose to express it, there are people that will celebrate you. So, like, I don't know, if that's a thing that you feel that you've been fighting against, I'm giving you permission now to just like stop fighting it. Just let go of that. It's like Homer Simpson when he sticks his hand up the vending machines, right? And he's stuck in those two vending machines, and they're like, have you tried just letting go of the chips? And he lets go, and then his hands come out, right? They're getting ready to like saw his arms off, and it's like, if you just let go of the potato chips, it all comes back to potato chips for some reason this episode. I don't know. Man.
Are you hungry? I mean, it's kind of late, man.
I could go for some chips for sure, but I
It'd be
could
bad
always go for
podcasting
some.
to have chips right now.
Listen, this is the thing, is that you've never had ketchup chips before, so you don't understand the gravitational pull of ketchup chips. And once you start talking about them, but I don't have any grape soda, so I do have some grape Kool-Aid, which will do in a pinch. But those bubbles, you gotta have the bubbles. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is about bubbles, but they make drinks so much better, don't they?
I have a
Except club
problem with
soda.
soda.
It's,
Yeah, club soda is the worst, but I have a problem with soda that I'm trying to wean off, but
I
it's
hear you.
hard.
I hear you. I hear you, but then
I
I discovered that Cherry Coke Zero exists, and then from there, that was the gateway. Because diet soda just never did it for me, but then Cherry Coke Zero is like the cherry overpowered the aspartame
yeah,
aftertaste. I was like, oh man, this is great. And then I tried Dr. Pepper
Dr.
Zero
Pepper's
Sugar.
the best, dude.
Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar just tastes like a Dr. Pepper, you guys. It just tastes like a Dr. Pepper. There is very little difference. Like if you put them side by side, I'd definitely be able to taste test them and distinguish. But Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar is so close to the original that, like, why bother with a Dr. Pepper which has so much sugar in it that's going to rot your teeth and give you diabetes, whereas you could just have a Dr. Pepper Zero sugar, and it's like, if I could put some vanilla in that, it would be like the best drink ever. The best drink ever.
I don't know about up in Canada, but they have a couple over here. They have zero sugar for Dr. Pepper, zero sugar cherry, and then berry. And that one is phenomenal. And I can't find it anywhere since last year. So I think
The
it was a
berry one.
seasonal one,
Yeah,
but it's so
that's like orange vanilla Coke, which, like,
yes.
I was
Oh,
so reluctant to try it, and I'm so mad at myself for ever holding back, because the second that I had one, I was like, this is the best soda that's ever existed. Oh my god.
dude. Okay, so orange. So that one actually tastes like a old Cuban soda. So for the people that don't know, I'm Cuban, or at least Cuban descent. I was born in Hollywood, California, but it's
Yeah.
very similar to and it's a soda, even though it's called Iron Beer, but it's a soda, and it's the Coke vanilla, orange vanilla. It tastes exactly the same. It's so
Does it?
good. So
It's
if you
so
can
good,
find an
man.
Iron Beer out there, there's your flavor profile for that.
It's so good. So good. Yeah. Oh boy.
We got to finish this episode, man.
Oh, we're done. Like, that's the thing, is that I think that we've talked about pretty much everything. We get the scene at the very end, the hello there, but there's not really much to say. That we kind of talked about it already, right? But
And Qui-Gon.
yeah, I guess Qui-Gon. But this is the thing: Qui-Gon's a foregone conclusion from the first episode. You're like, so
Sure.
this ends.
Yeah.
The final scene of this is Qui-Gon, and it's just, what took you so long?
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
It's
It
almost
is, I mean,
yeah.
it is great. And like I said, like from that moment with Leia, with Bale saying like we'll change them together. Um, like that's when the emotions start overflowing from the whole series, and it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop all the way through the Qui-Gon thing. I mean, um like my dad died, it'll be like 2 years ago this November. And so like obviously like, the Obi-Wan series is like right dead center in my experience of that currently, presently, right? But it came very soon after losing my dad. So the the connection on that level is like, it's very strong. There's that, and Ghostbusters Afterlife at the very end of that movie,
Oh man. Wow.
when Egon shows up at the end of that movie. It's like those two things, like I just like it is impossible. It's impossible for me to I experience either of these things without getting emotional, because I just connect it with that, because like that is Obi-Wan's father figure, right? I mean, another great Star Wars book to read is Master and Apprentice. If you want more of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, you get Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, you also get Dooku and Qui-Gon in that.
Hmm.
And uh yeah, I mean, it just that Obi-Wan's my favorite character. We've talked about this, right? I mean, like, I think anybody who's been listening to me podcast about Star Wars for the last 15 years is fully aware of how much I love Obi-Wan. So everything in life relates back to Obi-Wan eventually. It all comes back to Obi-Wan. In the way that it all comes back to Star Wars, it always all comes back to Obi-Wan Kenobi. uh and that, like, so that relationship between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon is a father-son relationship, and so it transfers onto my relationship with my dad. So seeing that at the end, it's like, yeah, it's the joy on Ewan's face at finally seeing Qui-Gon is in such stark contrast to the beginning of the season, of the series, when he is almost angry that Qui-Gon
Yeah.
hasn't shown up, right? And then Qui-Gon being like, "I was always here. You just weren't ready to see me yet. Like, it wasn't me. It was you. Like, you needed to get through this." And that is, I mean, like when Bale says earlier, "We can never repay you," and he looks at Leia and he says, she's already done that. This is what
Mm.
he's talking about, is that
Yeah.
like that weight that was on him is gone. It's lifted. Um and he's
Yeah.
free,
It's
right? So
beautiful.
yeah. Um yeah, and then Qui-Gon saying like, "Come on, let's go. We've still got a long ways to go." It just, oh, Star Wars is so good, man. Star Wars is so good. Like, and there are all these people that like, they just, and I know I griped a bunch about Andor in this episode, so I'm going to sound a little bit hypocritical by saying this, but like, there are so many people that just want to tear this stuff apart. The quality of Andor is never a problem for me. Andor is a great series, and I can't wait for season 2. It's fantastic. It would be so much easier to dismiss Andor, and I'd be less like frustrated by it if it weren't so damn good. That's the problem for me,
Yeah.
is how good it is. Like, it's really easy for me to dismiss Rogue One, because Rogue One is like 60% of a good movie, and then like that other 40% is just like sloppy. It's just sloppy. I don't think it's Gareth Edwards' fault, and I don't think it's any of the actors' faults. I don't think it's even the writers' fault. I think it's like, if Bob Iger got in there and was like, "No, you can't make a movie like this." I think Rogue One was supposed to be way closer to Andor than it ended up, and
Right.
I had it would have, I think I would have been a lot more jazzed by it. But at the same time, I would have been like, "This isn't very Star Wars." They needed an alien sidekick. That's the thing. They you like that is the thing that is missing in almost all of these shows.
Too many humans.
Book of Boba Fett is the only one that nails it, because Chrysanthemum is like he's there. I mean, like almost everybody that Boba surrounds himself with is a non-human, right? Whether it's like his droid, I can't remember the droid, is 8BD or something like that. The one uh, his like his main butler droid, right? And then the Gamorreans, and like that show's so chock full of aliens. It's great. And I mean, like the Tuscans being a major part of it, all of that. And yeah,
Right.
it's it Book of Boba Fett gets it. Book of Boba Fett gets it. So these other shows don't get it as much. Like that stuff is gotta have
Even
it,
the
man.
mods, even the mods,
Even the
they're
mods, yeah.
huge, but there's that Star Wars twist to them,
Yeah.
and it's the next generation where
Yeah.
before, even in as Return of the Jedi and whatnot, where we have lines like from Obi-Wan saying he Vader's more machine than man, as a bad thing. Like this is the next generation where they're accepting and actually like they're using their additions as like as a positive. And so it's like, again, it's that Star Wars flip where you take something that could be considered a negative and turn it into a positive
Yeah, totally.
with the mods. But anyway,
Yeah, no, yeah, like I'm excited for Ahsoka because we've got, I mean, Ahsoka herself is an alien, but
Hera,
you know,
yeah.
we got Hu Yang in it, we've got Hera in it, right? Like it's just, I don't know, man. I need my Star Wars to be colorful and diverse and full of things that I can only imagine, and then bring them to life on screen. And Santo, he's man, they've done Wookiees so many times, and they've even done Chewbacca poorly, right? Like in Revenge of the Sith, Chewbacca does not look like Chewbacca. He does
It's
not
rough.
emote like Chewbacca. I'm so glad that for the sequels they managed to recapture that, and Yuna Sootomo taking over for Peter Mayhew embodies that character so well, so well. His performance in The Last Jedi is a thing that nobody ever talks about, but it's so good. It's so good. Um, and those are big shoes to fill, literally and figuratively. Um, but then like Santo is just like, man, that the characterization of it, the physical performance of it, and they figured out the key, which is the eyes. I said this a lot when Joe and I were talking about
Hmm.
Book of Boba Fett. It is the eyes. You cannot have a Wookiee character if you don't have those eyes, right? Like it just like that's what makes Chewie over any other Wookiee that we see. Is like when we look into those eyes, we see those blue eyes and the gentleness and the compassion and the love that Chewbacca has for his companions. Like that's what makes Chewie. And I mean, like it's Indiana, right? It's the dog. It's
Hmm.
it's George's co-pilot, and that's why that's there. That's why that comes through, and that's why George cast Peter Mayhew, and then why that character comes across the way that he does, and why we have the great moment in A New Hope of Han shooting back into the thing. It's like, oh, you big baby, right? Like, I because we need that moment of like, yeah, Chewbacca can rip your arms off, but he's also scared of things. Like he is actually just a big softie. He's a gentle giant. Um, but yeah, but then Black Chrysanthemum, it's like we go the other way with it, but you just get just that incredible performance. But it so much of it relies on the eyes, right? And man,
Hmm.
I'm kind of vamping
I'm,
because I'm trying to remember the name of the actor because I want to give him credit. But
yeah, I'm trying to type it up too.
I
I felt you.
it's like on the tip of my tongue. It's killing me. Um, that is the biggest thing of like Book of Boba Fett not going over as well, and it's like, and the idea that like Chrysanthemum is now tied to Boba Fett, and so if we don't get Boba Fett back in something, we don't get Chrysanthemum back, and I mean like listen, I also want Tamora Morrison, Carrie Jones
Kerry
is
Jones, yeah.
Black Chrysanthemum, and yeah, like it is all in the eyes. it's all in the eyes, like that. And the reason why we can end up connecting to Chrysanthemum by the end of it and forgiving him and him becoming a hero by the end is because, I mean, an anti-hero. He's a little bit of a, you know, but
Well, that's what's cool about Chrysanthemum is that he's basically like, and the Star Wars inherently is about found families, and Book of Boba Fett actually has a found family, and it's a darker representation of like the original trilogy. You know, Han, Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, the droids. It's like Dr. Afra's flip with the droids with 000 and BT-1. It's like it's
Mhm.
that darker. It's not like Sith or anything, but it's definitely like the darker edge of the found family trope. That's why we have that beautiful moment at the end of Boba Fett where they're all together, ruling Mos Espa, and that final shot before they go see Mando. But yeah, the eyes for sure. Kerry Jones, well done.
Yeah, totally. And we're talking about Book of Boba Fett for some reason on our Obi-Wan Kenobi finale episode. We've talked about everything. I mean, we've talked about Obi-Wan quite a bit. We've been talking for 2.5 hours, so um, I think that's a good place to cut it. I think that's a good place to end. It's going to be a bit of a break. I think there might be a reason or two to come back. Oh, listen, there will be at the beginning of August. There will be a 15th anniversary podcast episode that will be on this. It'll be on all of the feeds. It'll go out on every one of our Star Wars podcast feeds, because it will be the 15th anniversary of the first episode of Frontlines, which I think is a big deal. So there will be something between now and Ahsoka for sure, because there will be that. There might be one other episode because there's a couple other things I'm kind of talking to people about. We might actually come back and talk about Willow at some point soon as well. Because I'm working on a project with Ty Black from Wit and Folly, and we're doing a Willow zine. So I think I'm gonna see if I can get a couple of people to just talk about Willow a little bit, and then talk about the zine just to kind of get the word out about that. As we get closer to the release of that, that's just something that I'm working on in the background. Um, with them, with Ty and a few other people.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's an exciting thing. But we will be back at the end of August, 2 episode season premiere of Ahsoka, and Joe will be back with me to do those recaps. So it'll be me and Joe talking Ahsoka, and yeah, and then I'm sure like Skeleton Crew is meant to be later this year, so we'll have that as well. But we'll have that, and yeah, go check out Perfect 10 as well if you haven't listened to Perfect 10, which is sort of my it's we mostly talk about movies, but every episode I have a guest on and they bring their what they consider a perfect 10, which is not necessarily like a flawless movie or TV show or video game or whatever, but something that for you, like this perfect 10 is kind of a subjective thing. Um, so examples of that would be like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a perfect 10 movie. The Shawshank Redemption is a perfect 10. I would consider Obi-Wan Kenobi a perfect 10 for me personally. I don't know if that's universal, but for me, it definitely is. And so we've done episodes on, we just did an episode on Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is of interest to Lucasfilm fans. We did an episode on Gargoyles, Scott Pilgrim. We did an episode on Avatar, Blue Cat Avatar, not Airbender Avatar. Um, and at the end of this week, it's out for Patreon supporters, but at the end of this week, we'll have the our next episode, which is about the movie Casanova, the Heath Ledger film Casanova. That Ty is on that episode with me, and it's a fantastic episode. I don't expect this movie to be for everybody. I think that it's a very specific. It's a niche within a niche, but I loved it so much. Ty obviously loves it because she brought it as her second Perfect 10. The first one was Heath Ledger in A Knight's Tale. So we'll close it out with the trilogy. We'll do 10 Things I Hate About You. But but yeah, I mean, like, we both love it so much when we talk about it. So I think even if you don't necessarily care for the movie that much, if you've seen it and you didn't really like it, we might give you a new appreciation for it. If you haven't seen it, you want to listen to us talk about it, it might make you want to watch it. If you like Shakespeare at all, I think it's worth it to give it a try, because it's got a very Shakespeare vibe. But
Got a good cast.
yeah, oh my god, the cast is unbelievable, man. Oliver Platt, so good. He's so good in it. Man, it's a great movie, and Ty and I had a great conversation. So that's going to be out on podcast feeds this Friday. And yeah, but other than that, I mean, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I need a little bit of a breather. Life has been hectic, so take a little bit of a break and then be back. We'll be back for the anniversary, and then we'll be back for Ahsoka after that. So, yeah. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you to anybody who supports us on Patreon, patreon.com/thunderquack. Listen, if you want to hear me ramble about things like ketchup chips, Patreon is a good investment for you. If you head over there, $5. We have one tier. All of the bonuses, all of the rewards are available at the one tier. It's $5 a month. You can also pay that annually and get I think it's like a 15% discount or something like that on the year, if you want to just pay it all up front. And you get Perfect 10 early. You get I do a bi-weekly podcast over there called Off the Record, where I kind of just talk about pop culture or whatever, right? It's usually fairly topical. Like, for example, I have to record one this coming Monday, and it'll probably end up being about my adventures with Superman, which is the new Superman animated series. Because that's a really great place for me to talk about that, and it is so good. So if you want to hear me talk about other pop culture stuff other than Star Wars, but also Star Wars, like, let's be realistic, I'm going to talk about Star Wars too. Then that's the place. And Perfect 10 also has a companion show that's a Patreon exclusive called the Perfect 10 Pop Quiz, which for every topic that we do, every episode that we release, we do a pop quiz episode as well, which is like a 10 question trivia podcast that Tim Dipple does, and it's fantastic. He's so good. He is a master of trivia. It's a great little companion piece, and that's another one of the bonuses. And the last thing that I'll plug is, as Twitter continues to burn, and some folks choose to fiddle, I would like to get off of that platform, but I don't want to leave behind all of the people who I love interacting with. So we have a Discord server. We have a Discord server for Thunderquack. We talk about Star Wars on it all the time. If you go to thunderquack.com/discord, it will forward you to the invite URL to join our Discord server. If you've never been on Discord before, I say check it out. It's basically a bunch of chat rooms. I kind of consider it like private Twitter. So you don't, like, it's just whoever's in the server, and so far everybody in the server is pretty rad. And if somebody lame shows up, we'll kick them out. And when I say lame, I mean somebody who's like a bigot, or or an asshole or something like that. Like, we won't tolerate that sort of stuff. So it is a cool place to hang out. It is a safe place to hang out, and the people that are in there are some of my favorite people on the planet. So yeah, come hang out with us on Discord. I come chat with us and that sort of thing. And if you are a Patreon supporter, there is a special section that is only for Patreon supporters. So definitely do that. Come hang out with us and talk about Star Wars and Marvel and Disney and DC and everything. I mean, like, we've got channels for Jurassic Park, for yeah, everything. Cool. Thank you guys for listening. Marty, thank you for joining me on this journey to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I mean, you'll be around. I'll pull you back in for other stuff.
Oh, thanks for having me,
But
man.
yeah,
I appreciate just the opportunity. I haven't done this very often, so this is relatively new territory for me. I mean, I don't have 15 years under me. I got maybe a year and a dozen, in me. But I think I'm getting better at it. So I appreciate you, and this has been a blast for me. I love just the revisiting of the Obi-Wan series was just fantastic. But then getting to talk to you and talking uh, to you guys, it's just been fantastic, and getting the thoughts out there. And it's definitely a show worth revisiting, and it was just fun to do that. And appreciate you guys. Thank you so much again. But yeah, I'll see you guys whenever Mike gets me on again.
yeah, I'm sure there'll be an episode where Joe can't make it, and I'll need somebody to sub in. So, yeah, you're on the list, man. Awesome.
Awesome.
Again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for joining us on the Obi-Wan Kenobi retrospective. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll see you again in the future, in the near future, for the anniversary episode and for Ahsoka. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Thunderquack Force Perspectives. Our opening theme is composed for us by Christy Carew. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV, and join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Ketchup chips for life.